Welcome to the Village Council meeting, the regular meeting for January 13th, 2026. Let me begin by wishing everybody a Happy New Year. We'll begin as we usually do with a call to order. And tonight we'll have an invocation from the Reverend Sue Hudson, who's very active in the Presbyterian Church and is very engaged with an organization called Engaged Brains that works in Moore County on health issues. And so please come to the microphone. And
is this the one?
That's the one.
Okay. I hate to have my back to everybody out here, but let us pray.
Thank you.
Creative and loving God of all creation, we love you, we praise you, and we ask for your wisdom and discernment. Would you please pour out your Spirit upon these who are gathered here and these who are our leaders in Pinehurst? And Lord, give discernment, wisdom to these who are gathered, that they could make decisions for the good of all your people at all times, in all seasons of life. We thank you, we praise you, we love you. And all God's children said, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I mentioned earlier, Happy New Year. By the way, to my fellow council members, we've been reminded occasionally by listeners and residents to speak clearly into the microphone. So let's keep that in our minds as we talk. It's been 5 weeks since our last council meeting when we actually took our new official photo, now featured on the website, for those of you who are wondering where that might be. And as we usually begin these items, I will ask the village manager to bring us up to date.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few things for our report. We are kicking off the 250th anniversary of our country, and so we have a few items that we're doing. I'll just mention the first of those, that is the Beyond the Liberty Tree. So we are having a ceremony where we will be planting a tree at Marshall Park. That'll be on Friday, January 30th at 10 a.m. So we encourage everyone to come and join us. It will be a great celebration and just the first of many events that we'll have to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country. Also, on Tuesday, January 27th at 3:30 p.m., that is right before our next Village Council meeting, we'll be having the groundbreaking ceremony for our new Gibbons Library. So just across the street from the fire station, just down the road here. Again, everyone's welcome to join us. And our St. Patrick's Day is the other thing I wanted to mention. That is going to be Saturday, March 14th from 10 a.m. to about noon. And we are currently looking for any vendors, participants, anyone who wants to be a part of that. They are welcome to join us. Reach out to the Parks and Rec Department and you can get an application to be a part of that parade. And just one more thing. I want to recognize the great work that our harness track employees are doing. So we have rented 205 stalls at this point, which is the highest amount that anyone that works here can remember. So they're doing a great job. The facility looks really good, and they are, getting people to come and stay and rent their horses. So we're very proud of them.
Great news. Thank you. I have a few updates since our last meeting. I did have the occasion to attend with my colleagues the Village Christmas Luncheon, where we recognize a lot of our outstanding employees during the course of the year. I attended the Moore County Historical Holiday Party at the Shaw House in Southern Pines, which is a very interesting historical building that goes back long before most of us. The village manager and myself signed a letter to the North Carolina Department of Transportation regarding the next steps as we continue to discuss the Pinehurst traffic circle. We indicated to them that Councilman Taylor and Councilman Hooper would be representing the village in future discussions, and we look forward to those, and we pointed out some things that we hope could be some incremental improvements, and that we are still don't believe that what's being proposed is overall in the best interest of the village of Pinehurst at this time, but we look forward to keep discussions with them. We need to add that letter to the Hot Topics page so that our residents can read it and certainly share with the council. It is the letter we discussed at our last meeting. And finally, on the, just to make a note of how serious the staff is on keeping costs down, the village clerk has eliminated our free water at all these meetings. So any water or any other liquid you see on our tables is ours. It's not paid for by the taxpayers. So I want to compliment our village clerk. Thank you, Shannon.
I also want to point out that the heat is next. So if it starts getting a little cold,
Okay.
that's cost saving.
No, leave no stone unturned. Having said that, now I'll turn to John Taylor, if you have something to say.
Just one question, Doug. You mentioned 205 stalls. I thought in the prep materials it was at 103.
Yeah, maybe I made a mistake. But yes, it is 205, not the 100. And so I got the number wrong. It was 203, and then we got 2 more horses just recently.
And what's total capacity? Where are we as a percentage of?
We are pretty much there. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
That's absolutely fantastic. Good. Only really one thing to comment on, and that's a follow-up to the letter that we've sent to DOT. I will be reaching out to them to try to schedule our next meeting. In preparation for that, one of the things that was noticed at the public meeting that they held at the Fair Barn back in, I believe, October, was some information on crashes, historically, how that has been in the circle. And I have been working with the source data for that information, which are our own police reports. If you are involved in something there and if you just work it out with the other car, that's fine. But if you call for a member of the police department, we generate a report. And there are categories of reports. There's hit and run, there's property damage only, there's injury, what have you. And the interesting thing that I have found is that more recently, if there is a trend, it is downward. And that's really over the period of the last 2 years, whether that is due solely or even partially to the installation of the bollards, which I believe happened in early 2024, sometime I believe toward the late part of January 2024.
Correct.
It seems to be having an impact. So under the DOT's premise that they're looking to both improve efficiency and safety of the traffic circle, that will be one of the things we will be following up on. So more to come on that as we're able. Hopefully, we'll be able to schedule something before our next meeting, but we'll have to see. That's it for me.
Thank you, John. Councilman Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Short and sweet for me, as I still working to catch up to everybody else up here on a lot of topics. However, I did meet with Vaughn Hansen with the Fort Bragg Land Use Advisory Commission and our workings and dealings with them. He had a lot of high praise for Jack, who is stepping off of that board as I'm stepping on, and I'm just hoping to be able to fill with just half the knowledge that he praised Jack for. We'll have our first meeting with them in February.
Great.
I'm sorry?
Great.
Yes, sir. And yesterday, we had a bicycle pedestrian advisory committee. Doug has that committee well primed for a lot of success this year as we focus on one of the hottest, most important topics that many of our citizens within the feedback and surveys that we get. We discussed the number 6 sidewalks, both Phase 1 and Phase 2, that's been successfully completed and further planned by Doug.
Oh, I won't take all the credit, but yeah, to that point, we will be bidding out and advertising for the second phase of the sidewalks, and that will be in this Sunday's newspaper.
The committee's also been looking for funding sources on the future projects and as well to how to most wisely use our budget here at the village. And we're looking for new members. So we have 3 seats, I think, to fill Is that right? So if anybody is interested at all, please reach out to me, Doug. Look online. Happy to help and get you involved here in the village. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Barbara Ficklin, please.
Thank you. I asked the village manager if I could follow up on some commentary around the America 250 project in Pinehurst. One of the projects that we will be undertaking is a community cookbook project. When I first heard about it, I thought it was such a great idea. And I want to bring it up now because we need to get started on it now. The name of the cookbook is Stars, Stripes, and Shared Traditions, a Pinehurst recipe collection celebrating America's 250 years. It's also celebrating Pinehurst, our residents, families, traditions, and the things that make Pinehurst unique. It will include family recipes, family traditions, residents' stories, things that have been brought down through the generations, or simply tell a story about life in Pinehurst. As you know, most cookbooks are sort of regionally oriented or even locally, even site-specific. But Pinehurst, being unique because we are a collection of people from all over the place, this will be a very unique opportunity for us to kind of tell our history through the traditions of our families and residents. So I hope everyone will participate. If we don't all contribute to this, it won't go anywhere. So we need to make sure that everyone knows about it and knows how to contribute recipes, stories, etc. So the first thing to do is to go to our website, go to America 250 in Pinehurst. It lists there all of the projects that we will be doing, the last of which, the Community Cookbook, tells you how to submit a recipe online along with stories and ingredients and everything else. Or you can go visit the Given Memorial Library and Tufts Archives during business hours and actually have them scan written recipes into there it is, right? Thank you, very nice. And there's the online application at the bottom there, so you can see it. The critical thing is that recipe submissions are due by February 13th. That is 1 month from today. So we need to get our community activated and get these recipes coming in now. Cookbook release and sales dates, April to May of 2026. So short time frame, lots of opportunity for all of us to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the village staff for their patience and generosity, as I've been imposing on practically everyone to further my knowledge of the village, its organization, and its operations. And Doug, I hope you pass along my thanks to everyone. A special thanks to Audrey Moriarty, who spent a lot of time with me, introducing me to the extensive collection of items from Tufts Archives, as well as getting to know the physical plant of the building and the operations there. It's really a remarkable set of holdings. Angie Wisnett gave me a tour of the Cannon Park Community Center. I've met the staff there, and a remarkable number of young people are taking advantage of programs there. It's really an amazing service. Doug oriented me to the Welcome Center. That orientation included me carrying 30 boxes of supplies into the theater building. So thank you, Doug, for that. I've been attending meetings of the Planning and Zoning, Historic Preservation, Bike and Pedestrian committees. And I toured the Cancer Center with Carrie Simmons, the Director of Government Relations. Again, what a remarkable resource for our community. Next week, I'll be meeting with Nikki Foster, the CEO of First Health. And then on January 28th, I'll be attending the Board of Delegates meeting for the Central Pines Regional Council representing Pinehurst at the Durham meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Kevin. That concludes the reports from the members of the council and the village manager. So now we'll move on to item 4, which is motion to approve the consent agenda. All the items that we'll be taking up are considered routine or have been discussed at length in previous meetings and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion will be held unless requested by a member of the village council. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve all items contained on the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
So adopted. Okay, we'll move on to item 5 now, and that is an honorary resolution. We want to consider Resolution 26-01, honoring the service of Dr. Jeff Morgan as council member for the Village of Pinehurst, who served with many of us during the last several years. And so I'm going to officially embarrass him and ask him to come forward, and we can provide this to him. All right, let me read this. Resolution honoring the service of Dr. Jeff Morgan as council member for the Village of Pinehurst, North Carolina. Whereas the Village Council of Pinehurst, North Carolina wishes to acknowledge and express its appreciation to Dr. Morgan for his dedicated service to the citizens of Pinehurst as council member. And whereas Dr. Morgan served the Village of Pinehurst as council member from December 2021 to December 2025. And whereas Dr. Morgan dedicated his time, knowledge, and abilities to the village and provided thoughtful consideration to all matters. And whereas Dr. Morgan played an integral role in notable projects such as the design of the new Given Memorial Library and creation of the Pinehurst Fire Department's Quick Response Unit. And whereas Dr. Morgan served as the council representative on the Central Pines Regional Council and as a liaison to First Health. And whereas Dr. Morgan contributed to the development and adoption of the 2023 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the 2023 Stormwater Management and Master Plan, Village Place and Pinehurst South Small Area Plans, and Forum-Based Guidance Plans, and the 2025 Pinehurst Development Ordinance Update. And whereas Dr. Morgan strongly supported the preservation of the harness track for facilities and championed the creation of a Friends of the Harness Track organization, which you'll be hearing more about in the future. And whereas Dr. Morgan was and continues to be a strong advocate for the community of the Village of Pinehurst, now therefore be it resolved by the Village of Pinehurst on this day in January at our regular meeting that on behalf of the citizens of Pinehurst, we wish to express deep appreciation and gratitude to Dr. Morgan for the gifts of his time, ability, and commitment in carrying out his duties as council member for the Village of Pinehurst. And a copy of this resolution will be spread upon the permanent minutes of the Village of Pinehurst, and a copy, therefore, duly executed by the mayor and this village council will be presented to Dr. Morgan as a token of our gratitude right now. Thank you very much, Dr. Morgan. I know you want to say a few words. I just have to tell you, this morning I read the Wall Street Journal, which I usually do, and I pick and choose which op-eds I should read. And there was an op-ed there entitled, "Life is Too Short for Frequent Flyer Miles." I thought, well, let me read this. I read the entire article, and at the very end, there was a quote. The very last sentence was the quote, "The squeeze is not worth the juice." And it's one of those quotes you've left us with. I don't know if it got planted to this day, but we remember your comments often, and they were very helpful. Please, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. My heart's filled with gratitude right now. Truly is. And I say thank you to lots of folks here. But most importantly, this right here is a honoring from the Village of Pinehurst. I know, Patrick, you signed it. I appreciate it. But it's from Pinehurst. So thank you, Pinehurst. My gratitude is towards Pinehurst. I'm going to be a little more specific. I want to make sure I don't miss any folks. But starting out, I want to say thank you to my wife. Love of my life, most wonderful person. And she's not here right now. I just took her home from the hospital about 3 hours ago, where she's been in the hospital for 3 days with pneumonia. And a lot of that's going around, so wash your hands and, you know, avoid close spaces with people. But she's watching online. And she has supported me through lots of ups and downs. And so thank you, Laura. Love you, babe. And I'll see you in just a few minutes here, hopefully. Also want to say thank you to the people of Pinehurst, the citizens. It's been an honor to be able to serve you. Been an honor to be able to sit up and make decisions based or for our village. It's an honor. I want to say thank you to supporters. There's a lot of the people in the room right now that have taken the time to be here. Thank you. You honor me with your presence. There was a lot of work that went into campaigning. There's a lot of work that goes into identifying different issues and things like that. And so the supporters that I had, you did a wonderful job with that, and I do appreciate it. I want to say thank you to the multiple organizations that are out there, which you don't think about, but there's a lot of non-government organizations that help our community. I was involved in Friend to Friend. I was involved in the Arts Council. They make our community better. The hospital, which we just talked about, got a great hospital. We spent 3 days with my wife there. We have a lot of other elected representatives. We have a lot of other people on different staffs that contribute to us and making us a better place. You know, we've had a lot of interaction with NCDOT. There's just a ton of different organizations that are far-reaching outside of Pinehurst that we work with, and they were very helpful in making my job easier in getting stuff done. And so their professionalism and the things they did with that, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the pilot. Okay, and so Matt Lamb in particular, who's the main guy that covers the different things we have going on, but he's keeping our community informed about what goes on. Now, do I necessarily agree with all this stuff? No, but that's not important. What's important is that it's professionally covering what's going on so the people who can't take the time to be here can hear more about that. So I do appreciate what they've done with that. And then the last and certainly probably the most important other than my wife, our staff, folks back there. I don't think you understand just how professional we have with staff. They are excellent in what they do. The village manager's excellent. We've got a great lawyer on there now, on board now. Police chief, fire chief, the various leaders that we have in our organization, they are truly amazing what they do. And they do a lot of training for this. And I never knew this. Like, you know, who's in charge of the planning and zoning? Who's in charge of the development of what's going on? We have professionals all through here that really have done a lot of training, and they're excellent at what they do. And so I say thank you because while I tried to make good decisions in how I voted, you have taught me so much. And thank you for that. It's been very professional, and it's been a pleasure working with you. I also want to take a couple seconds to talk about the people behind me here, sitting up there. I know every one of them. And it may shock you, because of the politics involved, I like every one of them. I have personally had social engagements with various ones of them. Okay? Do I necessarily agree with them? No. And they'd be the first to admit they knew when I didn't agree with them. I'm willing to say my piece. But I am willing to tell you that I like them, and more importantly, I respect them. They are currently serving. They may make 25 cents an hour. It's a big commitment, okay? And so whether you like them or not, I want you to respect them. I want you to respect what they're doing for you, okay? And I'm going to give a little chastisement here. Don't want to let this escape. I don't do much on social media, never followed it, but trust me, I've got people that do, and they would present stuff to me about what's on social media. There are some trolls out there, is what it's known, who say vile things. I got no problem if you disagree with me politically. Actually, I don't really care if you say something vile to me. It bothered my wife. But what I don't like seeing is when people who are serving you back here, and then you get on social media and you become a troll and you get character assassination, they probably doesn't bother them too much because you don't get in this role if you've got thin skin. But their family might. And the only person that looks bad is the person putting it on social media. So if you are one of those very few people, and I'm sure it's nobody in this room here, and it may get out, I got no idea what Matt's going to write there, but if anybody watches this, let me just tell you my personal opinion. The only person that looks bad on that is the troll that's putting it on there, and that you should be ashamed of yourself, and I'm sure your parents are. Let's try to raise the whole conversation to be professional, treat each other with decorum, and respect what's going on here. So that's my ask of you. Last thing on here, as I conclude, I tried very hard to have principled leadership. And whether I was talking with a group that agreed with me or a group that disagreed with me, I tried to maintain the principles of liberty, independence, common sense, compassion, and fiscal responsibility. If you identify a time where I failed to do that, I apologize to you. But I tried very hard to make sure I'm doing that, even when I was around people who didn't necessarily agree with what I thought. So thank you so much. You honor me by letting me have served in this capacity. Take care.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. And we will now,
Mr. Mayor,
we need to do the
make it
resolution.
official,
We need
yes.
to do this officially. Okay. Is there a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 26-01, honoring the service of Dr. Jeff Morgan as council member for the Village of Pinehurst.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's adopted. Congratulations officially now. Okay. Now we'll move on to item 6. It's an appointment resolution for appointing Mr. Don Thrower as the Neighborhood Advisory Committee representative for the Pinehurst South area, which we have not had a representative of, at least for the 6 years or 4 years, and I've been on the council. So I'm very glad. I know that's Kristen, so you must be Don Thrower. So yes.
Yes.
Well, welcome. Kristen, do you have anything you wanted to say?
Thank you for having us tonight. Again, you said it, but we have never had a Pinehurst South NAC representative. And we were very fortunate to be able to meet Mr. Thrower at an event that Doug was at, and he said, you got to interview him. So I did, and I'm very glad I did, and I'd love to introduce you to him now.
Well, we're glad you're here. Please tell us all a little bit about yourself, your time in Pinehurst, where you're from originally, so that people out here can hear, and it'll be official because the pilot will be hearing this at the same time.
Sure. Yeah, I was.
Speak in the mic, please.
Let me see. There you go.
Is that better?
You'll learn how to use the mics real quick around here.
But my wife and I moved here from Georgia. I was born and raised in Georgia, and my wife's from Ohio. She moved down to Atlanta when she was like 21, and back in December 7th, 8th, we just had our 41st wedding anniversary. Okay. And our son, the reason we moved here is our son moved here from Georgia about 4 years ago for a job opportunity.
Oh, okay.
So he's our only child, and he's, I told my wife, I said, we're not getting younger, so if he's gonna, anyone to take care of us, it's gonna be our son. So we were fortunate, I did a little research, and he was living in Southern Pines, and I was just Googling neighborhoods, and I saw this South Pinehurst Cottage neighborhood come up. I was like, nice. So I drove up, met him for brunch, went through the neighborhood, and so he lives in that neighborhood too also. So he's right across the street from us, and people say, you're crazy. So no, I'm not, you know. It's nice, you know. And so I've enjoyed it, did a lot of research about this place. I love the population. I love hearing people say, the traffic around here is terrible. I was like, go to Atlanta for 2 minutes. You'll love coming back here in your traffic. Yeah, yeah. And but it's been, everybody we've met has been just super nice. I mean, it's just because I came where a population was over 1 million people in Gwinnett County, and it melting pot. So this is my hopefully my last place.
Okay, well, we're glad you're here. I'll ask if any of the other council members have a question for Don.
I will just say, even though there's no one else that is interested, we would still pick you if
We
there
would
were
still-
other. We really like
Yes.
you, so.
Yes, agreed.
Well, we look forward to you, unless Kevin or Barb have anything? No. We look forward to you joining us on the monthly meetings. It'll be held in this room, and you'll get to meet representatives from all the other areas, neighborhoods in our community, with the exception, I think, of Walker Station. That's the one, is that the last one we had to fill? That's it.
Walker Station is
be,
difficult.
yeah.
North Morganton, or we've got North Morganton, but we're working on a couple other areas.
Okay, so,
My first meeting may be an issue. I've just been here so months, and I got a letter from Moore County, jury duty.
oh gee, we wish we could say we could help you there, but no, it's not us. Anyway, we'll look forward to seeing you at meetings. And again, thank you for your interest to serve, because we are a community of volunteers. Many, many volunteers sort of make this whole operation run a bit. So with that, I will consider a motion.
I move to approve resolution 26-03, appointing Mr. Don Thrower as the Neighborhood Advisory Committee representative for Pinehurst South area.
Second.
A motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted. Congratulations, Don. We'll see you around. Okay. Now we will go on
Mr.
to,
Mayor, before
Yes.
we go to public comment, could I take one moment, please?
please, go ahead.
I don't know how much longer Jeff is going to stay here with a sick wife and what have you.
right.
I wanted to pick up on two things that he said, and it's not to suggest that I disagreed with other things. I don't think I did, but number one is comments about staff. I actually had someone with whom I interact frequently who is frequently critical of things going on here. And I would love to say that I disagree with him, but more often than not, his criticisms are well-founded. And he highlighted one person in particular, I will not call them out by name, but used the word encyclopedic to describe their knowledge of the particular area. I think there's a tendency in this world to think of people who work for the government as, well, they couldn't make it in the business world. And not even close to true here. I have, in my 2 years on council, learned an enormous amount on topics I had really no clue about before, and have been taught in a very professional way. And it really is a privilege to work with them, and it is a benefit to everyone sitting out here and the people who are hearing us and the people who are not. The other thing that, and this may be odd to call out, but he mentioned Matt Lamb and the service provided by covering the paper. And this applies to both Matt and his two colleagues who cover other aspects of our bodies, governmental bodies in Moore County. We often get involved in conversations that are bouncing around a lot. They're not always structured. That's probably a good thing. I have found that their ability to get to the meat of what we actually discussed in a relatively small number of words is really very good. I don't think I've ever read anything where I thought, you know what, they didn't get it. That's not what we said. We said something. And so I just wanted to, I know Matt's sitting over there, and I want to compliment Jeff for pointing that out, because that is an extremely valuable public service and not something that we can do on our own. We need help there. So Jeff, thank you for pointing those things out.
Thank you, John Taylor. Well said. And now we'll move on to item 7, which is public comments. I guess we have a few. Just one? Very well. One is enough. We have a comment from Mr. Bill Grover. Bill Grover, on the topic of Senior Advisory Committee. Come forward, Mr. Grover. Please speak into the microphone. Tell us where you live.
Thank you. I'm Bill Grover. I live in Pinewild, and I'm a retired physician. I came to Pinehurst after investigating a number of places to retire to, and Pinehurst won the survey that I was doing in terms of its responsibility to retired people, its attitude towards healthy living. And I was invited here because of a potential senior advisory committee, which I would like to commend with strong positive comments. And I think that'll improve what's already a good system here in Pinehurst. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for your comments, and thank you for coming forward. Now, is anybody who did not sign up to make a public comment who would like to make one, you can now. Yes, please come forward.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Karen Sullivan. I live in Clarendon Gardens. I have been the only dementia medical provider in, I think, the history of the Sandhills, but certainly for the last 13 years. And currently, I'm a fellow with the Foundation of First Health to create dementia care pathways in our community, in the medical system and in community. Last year, we completed an amazing volunteer initiative of 60 community leaders who volunteered to create bridges back into community for older adults with brain change or dementia. This is the mission of my life, to include those people in community life. So the idea of a senior advisory council is very special, important, and needed. We are an aging community. We are a beautifully aging community, but the truth is, if you fast forward a few years, we're going to be at 45 to 50% older adults. And with that is going to come along some accommodations that need to be made if we want to continue including them in all the wonderful things that our municipality has to offer. So age being the #1 risk factor for dementia, the truth is we're going to be seeing a lot of that in our community. And Pinehurst is very well situated, of any place I know of in the world, to create innovative solutions to that problem. So when I heard of the Senior Advisory Council, I thought it was a brilliant first step in getting us to be more inclusive of older adults. That's from a sensory point of view, a social point of view, emotional and cognitive. And it couldn't have bigger support from me and all of my champions in the Engaged Brains Project. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to come forward and speak? And you don't have to be a doctor. It just so happens we've had 3 doctors in a row. Please. Okay.
Hi, my name is Lynn Drinkwater, and my husband and I moved to Pinehurst back in 2006, and we just love it out here. And it has changed a lot since we've been here. I've worked in healthcare in all different capacities since I've been here, and seen a lot and worked with seniors. I currently work for the Department of Aging and at the Senior Enrichment Center, and it's a little over 12 years now. And for anybody who's thinking there might be duplicated efforts with the Senior Advisory Council that we have at the Senior Enrichment Center, it's 2 different entities, because that advisory council has to do with what is going on at the Senior Enrichment Center. And also some of the grants that we get through the federal government for services that we provide through all of Moore County. So if there's an advisory committee that's going to be set up here that's working with Pinehurst for sidewalks and lighting and events and transportation in different capacities for how we have our medical transportation, it's 2 different entities. And I just wanted to say I'm in full support of this senior advisory committee as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Okay. That concludes our public comments section for this evening. We'll move on to item number 8, which is a public hearing. Doug, you want to set this up a little?
I'll actually let Alex do that.
Okay.
He's much better.
Okay.
Should we enter the public meeting first?
Yes, there should be a motion to do that, right?
I move to recess the regular meeting and enter into public hearing number 1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted. Go ahead. Go ahead, Alex.
All right, thank you. So first of the 2 public hearings tonight is to consider an official zoning map amendment for a little over 12 acres. The property is located off 15501 at the northern extent of our jurisdiction. The current address is 7941. 2 parcel IDs is listed. The request is to rezone the balance of that plus or a little over 12 acres from R5 and R20, medium and high density residential, to NC, neighborhood commercial. The property owner and applicant is as listed on the public hearing notice and in front of you guys and on the screen. And again, I'll try to orient everyone here is US 15501. This is in the village's ETJ, or extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction. It is surrounded by a portion of the Eastwood community, and just a little bit to the south off the map screen here would be like the very edge of the northern extent of the Pinehurst number 6 neighborhood. Again, current zoning is R5 and R20. The R20 designation is just a little sliver of the southern end of the property. It kind of comes right across with the back of this existing parcel here. And R5 Again, proposed zoning neighborhood commercial, and I will attest that the public hearing was duly posted and advertised according to general statute and the Pinehurst Development Ordinance.
Is the property all owned by one individual?
Correct.
Okay.
You can see there are the designation between the two parcels being this thick border right here. There is an existing gas station, which I will speak heavily to on the property. Before we get too far, though, this is what is kind of referred to as a conventional zoning map amendment, not conditional. We've become pretty accustomed to conditional zoning here in the village of Pinehurst, but this is not what that particular request is. It is a legislative decision, as a conditional zoning map amendment is, and it does require the process which we're in tonight, a public hearing. Conventional zoning map amendments do not provide or allow for the inclusion of any site-specific conditions related to the proposal, and neither is a general concept plan or general depiction of any potential future development or layout. With conventional zoning map amendments, if they're approved, all permitted uses and applicable development standards for whatever that district becomes would be applicable and required. The Planning and Zoning Board, as you guys have seen in your packet material and are familiar with, are to also hold a public hearing, review the proposal, and formulate a recommendation to you guys. And the Village Council, after holding a public hearing, may consider the request. You have to hold the public hearing first before you can make any action. And local governments, the governing board, in this case Village Council, has wide latitude when considering these legislative decisions. The only test given out by the North Carolina General Statutes is that you consider your adopted plan, comprehensive plan, and any other plans deemed necessary. And in doing so, you must make a statement of consistency with your plans and reasonableness and best interests of the local government. So getting into a little bit more about the background of the property and the analysis. Here you can see an aerial map, again, 15501, running north and south here. If you're heading north out of Pinehurst, this property is on the east side. Again, existing footprint here of gas station that predates the Village of Pinehurst zoning for the property. Again, currently R5 or residential zoning. Site access, as you can see, has quite a bit of frontage along US 15501. And then again, you can see I've got an environmental map that can show a little bit more, but if you know how to look at the topography and the aerial features here, you can see a clear area here. This is Nicks Creek, and the property is located within the Nicks Creek Watershed Protection District. The gas station, even though currently situated in a residential zoning district, is what's considered a legal non-conforming use, meaning it existed before Pinehurst placed any type of zoning designation on the property. Nonconformities can be treated very differently between nonconforming structures, nonconforming uses, nonconforming signs. Each have various protections and is typically governed by the local ordinance which is adopted. Typically, these are kind of put in a snow globe, meaning they're not able to completely redevelop or undergo substantial construction work to improve any of the conditions. Doing so would trigger full compliance with whatever development restrictions would be in place.
One question, as you continue north, is the property just north of that, is that still Pinehurst ETJ, or are we into the county? Where are we at there?
So I have a zoning map on another slide that will probably show that a little bit better, but our corporate limits do kind of jump right here. Again, the northern extent is with the Pinehurst number 6 neighborhood in the area next to where Christ Community Church is. Then it kind of, as typically we have the ETJ border surrounding our corporate limits around our perimeter. And then there's a substantial sized property up here to the north that is a satellite corporate limit parcel that's in the village's limits.
Oh, it is.
Non-contiguous, but still in the corporate limits.
Very close, yes. And it's zoned office and professional. So here's that aforementioned zoning map, and it's just barely, you see, almost contiguous. Here is that parcel that is in our corporate limits. Here's Southern Pines corporate limits, and then all this area is Pinehurst ETJ. Area on the west side is in Moore County zoning jurisdiction. So the zoning designations are included here on this map. Again, here's the existing properties that are subject to this rezoning request. To the north, you have a mix of residential and business classifications in the village and the county zoning jurisdiction. To the south, largely residential in the village's ETJ. To the east, the same. And to the west, you have a mix of institutional, business, and commercial, and a few residential zone districts in Moore County zoning jurisdiction.
Are there any structures in the office professional? I assume that's what OP is in the upper right?
There is none. That is a large vacant tract of land.
Okay.
The structure footprints are indicated by the gray boxes sort of on here.
Sure, yeah.
And some of them aren't quite fully up to date. There's been some recent developments in that area. All right, there's some site features that I definitely want to bring to everyone's attention. We'll kind of start with some environmental and utility factors here. So there are several here that could and would impact any future development of that property, no matter the applicable zoning. So there is a blue line stream, and a term is in quotes. It means it's identified on the USGS survey, and that is Nicks Creek. There is floodplains on the property. Obviously, there are wetlands, of course, associated with both the aforementioned. There are some overhead utilities, which also have some pretty significant 50-foot wide easements with, and there's a lot of slope on the property. I did mention before that the property is located within Nicks Creek's Watershed Protection District. That does limit some uses. A gas station is an allowed use in that specific classification of balance of watershed. And it does limit built-upon area to 24% or impervious surface to 24% of the total area unless a special intensity allocation is issued. All development would need to meet locally village-adopted and state stormwater requirements, not just water quantity, but also water quality, so the treatment of any of that runoff before it were to go into the wetlands. Again, the area to the south, I'll show on another map, and in an aerial, you can see where the overhead utility easement does take up a good portion of that southern tip of the properties. The site does have access and connection to public water. Public sewer is not available in the area. In the immediate area, the closest public sewer is right at the Senior Enrichment Center, which is just to the south and west. Nearby, really true available sewer main is over 1,000 feet away, and at the closest point would almost be in the backside of number 6. So any improvements to bring public sewer, Moore County Public Utilities there would incur a significant development cost. A lot of off-site improvements that would also be required to the existing Moore County infrastructure. So here's an environmental map that kind of highlights some of the issues that I just kind of went over. Here, the parcels that are highlighted are the subject properties. The blue shaded area is floodplain. You can just barely make out the existing gas station footprint here where my cursor is. It goes right up to the wetlands, which then meanders around to that north end of that property. So pretty much where that existing gas station footprint is, drawing a line at this angle to the east, is any development in that area would be problematic or just outright not allowed. It's kind of hard to see here, but you can see a cleared area where my cursor is going. Here we go, sorry. This is where the overhead utility easements are, again, a 50-foot wide on either side. So that area is likely to be difficult or be a challenge to have any type of footprint or developable area. Again, and I mentioned earlier, if a conventional rezoning is approved, all permitted uses within that newly approved or whatever that zoning designation would be, the property would be afforded those. I wanted to highlight the main differences between the neighborhood commercial uses, which would potentially be permitted, and those that are currently allowed with the residential zoning district. So here's a list broken apart by the use types: residential, office, commercial, entertainment, civic, educational, institutional, and so forth. Again, a fueling station is a permitted use in the neighborhood commercial district. These are all uses that could potentially be allowed if development criteria were met in the neighborhood, in any property zone, neighborhood commercial.
Just leave that up for a second. Okay. Okay, we can come back to that. Thank you.
And here are the ones that highlighted that would be different or only allowed in the R5 and the R20 zoning district, which would not be allowed in the neighborhood commercial. Same use classifications.
So that's now.
Correct.
The previous slide was if we change it.
Correct.
Could you back to the previous slide just for a minute, please, Alex? So what is listed under residential here seems more limited than what is listed under residential as currently zoned.
And conversely, more of the commercial and institutional uses than allowed. Yep. All right, plan consistency. So as I mentioned earlier, when you're considering any of these type of amendments, you're to consider your adopted plans, right? There's a reason why we adopted them. General statutes now require that if you're a local government and you're going to enact zoning rules, you have to have an adopted plan. And we do have several of those. And the term plans are defined in statute. So the current zoning, if you look at the conservation and growth map in the 2019 comprehensive plan, it is listed as suburban neighborhood as pretty much the entire northern part of our jurisdiction is, and it matches what the existing underlying zoning designations for all the residential areas, no distinction between if it's lower or medium or high density residential. The proposed zoning of neighborhood commercial is more consistent with the suburban center designation, not the suburban neighborhood. Pulled apart a couple of guiding principles and implementation strategies as well from the 2019 comprehensive plan that could be appropriate for this type of request, including balancing conservation and growth, which, as we know, wants us to strategically identify where areas should be more suitable and allow for more high-quality development. And taking care of a business encourage a variety of shopping and dining and cultural opportunities. Obviously, zoning needs to be reviewed time after time, and as we just comprehensively updated our entire development ordinance, we need to make sure that we're keeping up with changing factors in order to make sure everything is correct and that we're allowing the appropriate type of development. And also implementation strategy 7.9 seeks, which seems to be a pretty obvious, which to protect our environmental features and make sure we're applying appropriate regulations in those areas.
Let me go back to the two charts, because I think that's the most clear example of what happens if we change from where we are, the R5 and R20, to the neighborhood commercial.
Yep, and this is the reason why these were obviously displayed in the presentation for you guys to see. What is missing, there's context missing from here. So that's the use. So could a use be permitted there? Check. That's what this does. It checks that, right? The next part is like, okay, well, if you want to establish any new use or anything that would be deemed redevelopment, then there are a lot of development standards that would apply, and that's lost on these two slides. So what setbacks apply, what impervious surface limits, what building height, what type of building material, or is a special use permit allowed, is something, some other check and balance there. So that context is lost within these two slides.
Alex, so when we look at residential in the NC portion here, and it talks about dwelling mixed use, and under the R5, we have the single-family home. I believe some of the mixed use opportunity that would be afforded to the site, if it were to go neighborhood commercial, would be by special requirement.
That's to the exact point that I just made.
Yeah.
That those are some of the development standards that aren't captured in this, and so some of these carry special requirements on top of just the other dimensional criteria. That special requirement for mixed-use dwellings specifically state that the dwelling units can only be on the second floor and must not be allowed on the principal floor, the ground floor, which would need to be reserved for some sort of retail or office type space.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you to explain that a little bit of the steps of the mixed use that would need to go into special requirements. And also, if a development request came after the zoning change that included some mixed use, what steps would then take place, and would that trigger any further public reviews
or input?
Sorry,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. So it would depend on how much area would be developed. I know Barb knows this off the top of her head after going through the PDO update. So it depends on the number of acreage disturbed. If anything hits a threshold of 3 acres or more, it's considered a major site plan, which would require a general concept plan to be submitted, public hearing and review by the Planning and Zoning Board, formulate a recommendation to you all, and you will have another hearing similar to tonight, where you would review that general concept plan. That decision would be an administrative decision, and we would be looking at the checks and balances of all those development standards that would apply.
And just while we're on it, the total area that we're talking about is 12 and a quarter acres. You describe both floodplain and some right-of-ways. What would you ballpark the usable or developable area in these two parcels?
Roughly 25 to 30%.
So 3.5, 4 acres, something like that.
Above the 3 acres, that would most likely require
If a future or subsequent owner would want to develop that much of the area. Obviously, one highlighted reason, which I'll get to a little bit more into the conclusion, is that existing nonconformity, that footprint obviously would not exceed that, but, there's, I don't want to speak down on the property, but because, and this is what happens with a lot of nonconformities, is that there's a financial threshold in how properties or owners of nonconformities they have to meet in order to not be classified as like a substantial or redevelopment, which would trigger conformance. So there's a lot of Band-Aids that take place over periods of time instead of being able to address any blighted or deteriorated issues. So that footprint could be a little bit smaller, and depending on what all would be involved in that, may or may not meet that threshold of major or a minor site plan.
Whether we adopt the request or not, the land can be developed now.
Under the current, or it would have to meet the R5 or the R20.
R5,
zoning.
R10, but it can be developed.
Everything can be developed.
Okay. And the Tommy's, the gas station, they're able to do what they want with that area? Or can they upgrade their gas station? What can they do? I mean, I know where it is. I use it sometimes.
Limited. So they would be limited to like a footprint of about half, or redevelopment of about half. They could not expand. They could not intensify. They could not tear down, relocate gas pumps and fueling cells. The building, again, as you saw, it was right up against the floodplain and the wetlands. So there's very little that they could do. Again, I mentioned a cost threshold, and that's 50% of the market value, the current market value. So they couldn't put in a dollar figure of more than that, or they would be triggered to come into full compliance.
No Buc-ee's.
Let me just finish this line of thinking here. Could we make it easier for them, under separate council action, to improve that particular property, the Tommy's station, on our own? Do we have that authority as a council? If they wanted to say, I'd like to improve it, intensify it, without using that word, but bring it up to a little more par, because I don't think you can, nowadays, I don't think they let you build gas pumps that close to a highway.
They're non-conforming in a lot of other regulatory provisions as well, not just the Village of Pinehurst. No, so the application tonight is for a complete rezoning of the total property. So another opportunity would have to be in a form of another application for a zoning map amendment.
So the things that I'm seeing that are different that stand out between the R5 and R20 versus the neighborhood commercial is where under R5 and R20, you can't open up a bar or tavern or nightclub.
Correct.
You can't have an alcohol beverage sales store. You can't have a sexually oriented business. You can't have private clubs. You can't have amusements indoor. I guess that's sort of a games arcade or something. So that's prohibited now. But if we vote to change that, that would be allowable.
Potentially, yes.
Potentially?
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And following up on that, but if we were to grant neighborhood commercial zoning, it probably, because of some of the other triggers, couldn't tear down the existing facility and build, let's say, a medical clinic or a medical office. That would run afoul of other financial thresholds, which would trigger other constraints.
Well, it says medical office would be okay if we did it.
But there's a financial constraint, not,
Only if it's non-conforming. If this request were approved, then everything, that existing non-conformity would now conform because a fueling station is an approved or allowed use. in
so
that
they could,
district.
in theory, demolish the existing buildings and build one of these conforming.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, if it's okay, I'm going to continue through.
Yeah, please do.
All right, so kind of skip back on the plan consistency. So here's that land use designation on the conservation and growth map. You can see like the lion's share of that area, again, just follows what our existing zoning designation is, and that is, again, suburban neighborhood. And you see that large parcel that we've spoken to a little bit just to the north there has a similar land use designation of suburban center that could potentially be what the conservation and growth map would be amended to if this request were to be approved. Okay, so the Planning and Zoning Board took this matter up at their regular meeting on the 1st of December. There's a handful of folks that showed up and provided public comment, and most of the concerns that were presented to the Planning and Zoning Board regarding safety, mainly traffic safety in that area, and setbacks, questions regarding, where would potentially a future building be and how close to the rear or the side of a property line. So the Planning and Zoning Board, which we did forward you their statement of consistency in your meeting file, they considered the complexity of that nonconformity. A lot of the same questions and scenarios that we've kind of already touched on tonight were those that were discussed at the Planning and Zoning Board, rightfully so. They studied the comprehensive plan, and there was some talk about whether or not that land use designation and the existing zoning would be appropriate or not appropriate. And they ultimately unanimously recommend approval of the request to the neighborhood commercial zoning designation. And again, they acknowledge that inconsistency, but they believe that based on some of the existing conditions along that corridor, that portion of the US Highway 51 corridor, that they did find it was consistent with those two listed guiding principles and implementation strategies. Okay, staff recommendation. So this conventional map amendment took a lot more of a careful staff analysis than a typical one before. The last one of these such requests you guys heard was the changing of the property on Rattlesnake as part of sort of the land transfer between us and Moore County to this same zoning designation, neighborhood commercial. So obviously there's a long-standing non-conforming use there. I believe the gas station the tax records are pretty sparse, but I believe it was constructed at least in the early 1970s. If anyone has any knowledge different than that, I'd more welcome the correction. So with it being non-conforming, there is really no ability for it to be redeveloped or improved. I think some of the concerns about site access and safety there were well put, and rightfully so. There's 3 curb cuts right there, sort of at the bottom of a highway that has a 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. And again, this is a highway corridor that we do understand to be expanded to at least 3, maybe 4 lanes as part of the DOT STIP project for that widening of 15501. There is the potential, if this were to be approved, for redevelopment or complete development of that balance of the area that would be developable. This could and will, at time, no matter what of application, would have the ability to not only improve the blighted condition, but it would also improve through consultation with DOT, who would have to review and approve any driveway permits. Improve that site layout and that access management to direct the traffic off the highway and onto the property. And we would certainly be able to protect all the environmental concerns there. That area is, in my professional opinion, it is a U.S. highway. It is suitable and appropriate for a small-scale commercial development. Small scale may mean something different from one person to the next, and we don't have necessarily like floor area ratio caps for small-scale development. I think the conservation and growth map was a little short-sighted. It didn't really analyze the Highway 15-501 corridor. It just used whatever our existing zoning designation was, which again, I wasn't here when the village decided to, after being incorporated in 1980, to exercise its zoning authority and place that residential zoning district on an obviously existing commercial property. So I do think there's some lack of forethought there. And so as this proposal could offer an opportunity to vastly improve that site, absent any other major concerns that we could address by other means, I would recommend that this request be strongly considered by Village Council.
Question, is there an overlay, highway overlay corridor along that road?
Used to be,
It's no longer?
no longer.
When did it leave its site?
2014?
14, okay.
Alex, you've mentioned a couple of times in the context of preservation, environmental issues. Anytime you're dealing with a gas station, there can be tank leaks, there could have been spills by trucks. Do we need to consider any existing environmental hazards as part of this process, or is that beyond the scope of what we're being asked to do tonight?
So that would, there's another agency of jurisdiction for those, but I do think that is something to largely consider. Typically, underground and above ground storage are, now most things are underground storage, and there has to be containment based on double layers because of the location near the floodplain too. People don't realize that a lot of these tanks, they're buoyant in case there were a significant event, so they have to be bolted and anchored down. I'm not currently aware of how the tanks are stored on the property and whether or not they meet current rules or not. But obviously, any redevelopment of that gas station would certainly trigger all the other state and any other federal oversight that would require more than just a couple of Band-Aids. Obviously, our development standards and protections would apply no matter what development application were, but there would be a few more stringent ones for a gas station than there would, say, any type of residential use there.
And in our preparation documents for this hearing, there was some discussion of the possibility of conditional zoning. I don't see in the possible motions here that is something that we could adopt, or is that an option for us as part of this process tonight?
No. As I mentioned earlier in the beginning, this is just a conventional zoning map, so consideration of special conditions are not permissible with this. Because, again, it's not a conditional zoning request.
And we cannot turn it into one?
Correct. Yep, not with this particular application. It would have to be a different application.
The applicant would have to request conditional zoning. That would be another avenue to making some of these repairs on that building. What you should consider tonight, because this is a straight rezoning, as Alex was saying, you have to consider every potential use that falls under that rezoning commercial that could go there. So you should not make a decision tonight based on what the applicant says they're going to do or what they plan to do or what you think they might do. You should vote on rezoning are the types of uses allowed in this particular zoning designation, the types of uses we want to see in this area, not specific to the applicant, because that would be more of a conditional rezoning, but more specific to all of the uses that may go there. I also want to add, as the planning board decided that this was not consistent with our land use plan, if you do adopt the rezoning, that would have the effect of amending the land use plan to make it so that it comes into conformity.
So we had someone appear several meetings ago talking about sexually oriented businesses. That is a permitted use under the neighborhood commercial. And I think we were told at the time there's actually a general statute that says that has to be allowed.
So again, as part of that context that's missing from those range of allowed uses, that would require special use, which has also special requirements, which basically say it can't be within forget how many thousands of feet of a residentially zoned property, so that would take this potential property right out of that equation.
But again, the point is that we are effectively approving all permitted uses unless there is some other condition which might further constrain their use.
Correct.
And if we approve this, and then the current owner in 6 months decides to sell the property, our approval transfers with the property, correct?
Correct.
That's what I thought, okay.
Alex, since you've been interrupted, I'll do it some more. The only thing I would point out is that fueling stations are only allowed in neighborhood commercial in the village. So there's not another option if we want to eliminate that nonconformity for that gas station.
Other than a conditional.
Yeah.
Because the additional zoning would allow us to include that. Okay.
Depending on what the request was, right? We're talking about something that we don't have before us, but that is always a tool.
I'm sorry, Doug, you said that filling stations are only allowed
In neighborhood commercial.
And conditional zoning.
residential in neighborhood commercial? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
And the only one thing that you cannot consider or do with conditional zoning is condition a use that's not otherwise allowed in that, whatever that base zoning would be.
So if this property was to change hands and it was bought by one of these, I'll call it, because I can't think of another example, Sheets or one of these outfits, and they wanted to take over all 12 acres, or I guess 8 that are developable, we would deal with that. We
Correct.
could find ourselves dealing with that.
They wouldn't like our sign regulations because they typically like to be a little bit larger than what we'd apply. So yeah, which is kind of the reason why you see the 2 fueling stations that are in our jurisdiction, aside from this one, the 2 short stops,
Yes,
right over here and down on Highway 5.
yes,
They're largely non-conforming in a lot of ways too, which is why they stay.
where they are.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so we've talked a lot about potential other actions, but with this particular application tonight, I wanted council to understand and kind of outline what your options are with this application. So again, it's a legislative decision. We're in the public hearing, very early stages of the public hearing. You are required to consider your comprehensive plan. The minutes or the record must show that you at least cracked the book and considered it and looked at it. The Planning and Zoning Board and staff recommendation, and of course the public comment, which we haven't got to yet. While the hearing is still open, you have that option to continue it if you want to consider or evaluate something else further with the particular application before you. If you do consider that, you do have to state the specific time, date, and location. Otherwise, we have to do a new notice and make sure we're in the right time frame for that. If the public hearing is concluded, the council's options, and again, these were with all zoning map amendments, is you may approve the request, and doing so, you must adopt an ordinance. You may reject the proposal. You may defer action on the item until another specified later meeting date. And you also have the option, which I believe is done once in the past year and a half, you can refer the proposal back to Planning and Zoning Board to kind of kick it around a little bit.
And procedurally, the actual approval of the ordinance is done outside the public meeting?
Correct. It can be done either. It can be done in or out of the public hearing, but our practice has been to close the public hearing and then consider adopting the ordinance for the request.
Will we be hearing from the applicant? Is that typically part of this
Yeah,
process?
again, we're pretty early here, but our typical process, obviously, it's, the mayor calls this, but I kind of detail the application a little bit and kind of go through the steps and the process, the hoops, if you will. You'll hear from the applicant, and then, of course, we need to get to the public comment portion of the public hearing. And then you have the opportunity then to act on the hearing first, hopefully have that dialogue again with the applicant in case they have some special considerations or requests with their application, or if they can address any of the concerns that were raised. That's kind of the typical flow.
Any other questions specifically for Alex before we go on to the next phase here? Jeremy?
No, just No, Alex, thanks for explaining the uses and the special requirements, because each one of those special uses, just reiterating what you said, has a different set of special requirements to enact that use. So in many of those, when we look at our use table, if they have that SR beside them, there's many, many steps that Alex would need to go through. And it's much more reassuring to know that if more than 3 acres was disturbed on that, we would create another public hearing for us to bring forth to our public. So, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Barb, any questions? No. Kevin? No. Okay.
While we're on the topic of procedure, can I just, before I forget, I wanted to make one note. When we made the motion to enter the public hearing, I believe we made a motion to adjourn the regular meeting. I think procedurally, we don't need to do that. We can have the public hearing as part of the regular meeting, and that way, you know, it's everything we do before and after the public hearing is part of the regular meeting. So I think just procedurally, I would recommend in the future that we open the public hearing but not close the regular meeting, that remain open.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for that advice. I hadn't thought about that at all. Okay, thank you, Alex. And we'll ask the applicants to come forward. Please take a seat, at the table. You can introduce yourselves and
Do we want to bring the third mic down?
yeah, maybe Shannon or Alex. Can you grab the third mic? Well, it's all right. We have a third one. Yeah.
While you're speaking, if there's anything you want us to show on the screen, just let me know, and we'll try to find that.
Good evening. My name is Cody Norrod, and I'm with Rayford Development.
Good evening. My name is Carlo Pardo. I'm with Morrison Ritchie Associates, a civil engineer for the project.
And good evening. My name is Sean Davis. I'm a principal with Morrison Ritchie Associates.
What do you want to tell us based on the questions you've heard? Is there something you want to begin with, or?
Yeah, so just want to reiterate what Mr. Cameron mentioned about the environmental features and utilities of the site. So is it possible to go back to the environmental map?
This one?
Yes, please, thank you. So one thing that we have been constrained about with this site is the significant topography, the utility easements, and the floodplains and the wetlands. So as was mentioned before, there's only a portion of this site, not the entire 12.25 acres that can be developed here. And another thing that was mentioned that has to be considered is the maximum threshold of the BUA or impervious limit for this site because of the watershed. I believe it's a class 3 protected watershed, so that limits it to 24% impervious. So there's not going to be, it's not going to be entirely developed and entirely impervious, all of the 12.25 acres for this site. So it is a much smaller footprint. We actually started this conversation with Mr. Cameron with a pre-application meeting, probably back in March or April, and we've looked at different scenarios. So through discussing different scenarios with him, through DOT, we've discussed with Kevin Redinger, the assistant engineer for the district office here for Pinehurst, and he did mention, as Mr. Cameron said, that the STIP project in the future will widen the road, so hopefully look to the traffic safety. Currently, the existing site has 3 driveway cuts, and they have requested to reduce it down to 2. So that is part of our conceptual plan that we look at in coordinating with the client, as well as that's something that they do want to only approve 2 driveway permits. So we're looking at all aspects of this as we look to plan for this site.
So in addition, one of the things that is really important, as your village manager pointed out, neighbor commercial is the only zoning category that allows the existing use to continue as it, and would eliminate the nonconformity and bring it in pardon me, bring it into compliance and allow the owner pardon me, to bring it into compliance. So that, coupled with the fact that there is a very limited development area here, as Carlo had mentioned, there's not 12.275 acres. It's approximately how many acres is developed, have we determined is it developable?
About about 60%, including the pond area, which was not factored in Mr. Cameron's
Right.
numbers.
So there's, about 7 to 8 acres of the site is developable.
I thought it was a little less than that, so, okay.
Yep. So,
But in questioning Alex, it was 3.5 to 4.
Yeah.
It was, but that was. Right.
So the right answer is, let's call it 7 as an approximation.
Okay.
Yes, and just to clarify, that's not impervious area, that's just a stormwater facility, yes.
But at 7 acres, 24% of that, it's a little under, is an acre and a half, between an acre and a half and 2 acres.
I'm sorry.
And impervious on 7 acres.
But 24% of the entire 12.27 acres.
Yeah, so roughly 3 acres can be impervious
On the whole site,
on the whole site.
even only 7 acres is available given other constraints, either environmental or right-of-way.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And you have to apply, as Director Cameron said, you have to apply all of the other development regulations that are in the village's PDO. The setback requirements, the landscape requirements, the variety of other things that are included in that.
Given those restraints, I think one of your original concepts was like I thought I saw the number, a 19-unit plan.
So
And
the way that was laid out was there were building footprints, and internally within those building footprints, we had put, a demarcation of potential tenant spaces. Those are 20 by 70 feet, 20 feet wide by 70 feet deep. They're very, very small. The reality is that's going to be dictated by the market. If, for example, a user comes in and says, I need 5,000 square feet, well, then you're only going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 of those, 5 or 6 uses. It's completely different. So I would not base it on that graphic demarcation on any plan that you saw.
And was the concept of a unit single level or double level in your mind?
It's single story.
Single, sorry, thank you.
At the end of the day, what we would like to do is we would obviously would like to have this petition accepted and approved by the council. But if you believe that it would be necessary and appropriate for us to go back and look and work with staff and the village and talk with you more about it, we would be happy to do that. We believe that this is the appropriate zoning category for it based on the site's considerations and site limitations, that the proposed development would be appropriate. Living here in Pinehurst and often frequenting, this is kind of a little bit of a retail desert in the northern portion of Pinehurst. I mean, people who live in Pinehurst number 6 have to either go to Carthage or go down to 11 to get to some retail. This could offer that type of opportunity close to home, which would be very, very good. And so that's, I think, where we are.
But that's what you see as what you think you'd like to do is what are called general commercial, small offices, whatever.
It's going to be service-oriented commercial. I mean, at the end of the day, this is, ideally, this would be the fuel station, obviously, and its associated, convenience store that's associated with that. But then there's services, whether or not it be a liquor store or whether or not it be a dry cleaner or a deli or, those kinds of things that, I mean, before I moved here, I came down to Pinehurst every year, and oftentimes we would head up north, and there was nothing up here. I mean, if you're up here visiting and you go by, you're like, I don't even know where to go to get anything. Well, this would provide that opportunity very close to wherever you're staying.
Questions by anybody? No. Jeremy? No. No. Did you look at the idea of doing conditional zoning before you went this approach?
No, sir. We talked about it, we considered it, but it just seemed that was the best option to move forward with it.
Part of the issue with the conditional zoning is you have to have a very specific footprint and development plan associated with the conditional zoning. It goes before your technical review committee and a variety of other things. And at this point in the process, we didn't want to nail down a specific footprint. So that was probably the primary reason why. In terms of, limiting the uses, again, I think as Councilman mentioned, some of these uses have additional restrictions which would ideally, inevitably prohibit them from development on this site. And quite frankly, I'm shocked that a sexually oriented business is even allowed in yours, but I understand it from a constitutional standpoint. So.
Don't worry, you can't do that. No.
I know. So that is the primary reason is at this point in time, we didn't have a very specific plan to go to that would be the part of a conditional zoning application.
And it's been pointed out that there is no sewer service there, and it's actually reasonably far away. I don't think you'd want to pay to extend the line there.
Which provides additional limitation. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
How does that impact what you think you may want to develop, having to work off septic or what have you?
That's one of the many things that we need to work through as part of the development approval process, what limitations that would place on the available development capacity of the site.
Yes, sir. Some of the things we went through before to kind of address that issue is, potentially a lift station to handle the sewer. And then I would like to say that as far as like the development concerns go, the owner, he takes a lot of pride in the work he does, especially with gas stations. That's kind of their bread and butter. They really want to, fix up that gas station and make it really nice. Obviously, additionally, wants to develop everything else. But a lot of the commercial spaces that they do are more in line with small businesses, not large chains, especially with what they're proposing to do there.
Because of the dimensions of the site and accessibility and topography and all of the other constraints that we've talked about, I mean, you're talking about what we would consider in the industry more inline speculative retail. It's a 70-foot deep building. It's, so however long we can get with the necessary parking to service those uses and whatnot. This is not a large footprint type of a opportunity here.
Just staying on the concept of sewer, would you envision sort of, let's say communal, say a men's and a women's bathroom that any offices in the building would use, because that would minimize the amount of connection to septic and so forth?
We really depend upon the uses. For example, if a restaurant was to come in, I think that would require its own.
Sure.
But they may be limited in terms of what sewage disposal they can have, on lot. And then there's also building code requirements for adequate, restrooms, facilities based on square footage and whatnot. So.
A little bit, if approved, you would then go out, this is kind of we will build to suit. You're going to go look for tenants and adapt the floor plan to what you think the market is.
So Sean, to further that a little further, once you have the zoning cleared up and what the uses will be allowed, then obviously you're going to make the best decisions for yourself, given the site, and as well as maybe what the market would hand you from a neighborhood commercial standpoint and the uses that are provided. Okay.
Correct. And that's why, zoning is typically the first step in that process. We can't go out to the market and talk to the market about, hey, this is what we're proposing. They'll look at it and say, well, you're zoned R5 and R20. That's not permissible. You need to get to the zoning part of it. And we couldn't go to the conditional zoning part of it without getting into greater detail than we really know without going to the market.
Well, i.e. at this point in time, why we don't require general concept plans for this stage, which makes a lot of sense. You stated by our rough estimations, kind of back of the envelope figures, 7 acres of this is developable. Does that include the gas station that's currently there?
Yes.
Okay, that does. Okay, thank you.
And the stormwater, as Carlo had pointed out, and the necessary stormwater management.
And then you're going to have to look at your sewer. Where's that going to go? Yep. So there's some other considerations. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for our folks here? Then maybe we should seek public comments right now.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Steve. Hearing remains open, so we may ask you back. Yeah, you can leave it there, that's fine. Oh, you want to say?
I'll take it for the public comment.
Oh, that's right, we have public comments. Okay, we now enter the public comment portion of this public hearing. So anybody from the public who would like to come forward and speak either in favor of, or opposition to, or somewhere in between regarding what you've just heard and what you may have read, please come forward and to the microphone, introduce yourself, and we look forward to hearing from you. You don't believe it here? I'll take that as no comments, and okay, no comments it is. So that sort of leaves us where we are now here as we contemplate this. I'm a little undecided. I prefer conditional zoning, but I want to hear what the rest of the council says about this, because this is we are in essence giving a green light to possible things that may happen much further down the road, no pun intended, but these are decisions that will be triggered by our actions. And so I think we just need to give some thought to that.
Close the public hearing before you debate the ordinance?
But leave the hearing open.
Well, I think the public hearing portion is, unless there are additional questions for the applicant.
Well, that's why we may want to call them back.
Fine.
Okay. So go ahead. Comments?
Alex, one question for you. We have guidance in the comprehensive plan regarding development in the ETJ. I think most of us tend to think of that as the western ETJ, but this is in the Pinehurst ETJ and would be subject to those comments, yes?
So one of the very specific portions of our conservation and growth map in the 2019 comprehensive plan are the 5 focus areas. Focus area 1 is the area we refer to as what you just did, that western ETJ. This area is not included in that focus area 1, even though it is in ETJ. So focus area 1 didn't encompass all of our ETJ, but it did encompass that southwestern portion of our jurisdiction that's largely zoned R210. This area is not. This area was closer to the area on the conservation and growth map tabbed area of interest, which was the area at the time of adoption of the comprehensive plan, the village was considering extending its ETJ. This would have, most of that area to the west and south would have been if ultimately that had played out, but we know it didn't.
But so the reference here in the possible options, saying that it's inconsistent with the conservation and growth map, that is the portion of the comp plan that speaks to this particular parcel?
Correct. This area right here, right? And Dan jumped there, and I'm glad he did, because it is important to note, and statutes allow this now, that if you approve something that is inconsistent, especially inconsistent with something such as like a future land use map, which this isn't quite a future land use map, but it works similar, that it would also amend that map in our comprehensive plan, so that the zoning and the map would also align together.
I believe you did say that it is staff's recommendation that we approve this rezoning.
Yeah, again, based on the very careful analysis, I've spent probably 10 times more time on this conventional rezoning application than I have any others, because there's some complexity here, a lot that we've barely scratched the surface on, a lot what Jeremy was trying to get to with, some of the comma SRs that are missing from those allowed uses. Sean made a good point that some of those may be listed as an allowed use in the neighborhood commercial district, but they have to be in this area or situated this way or meet this or that requirement, and then therefore it's essentially prohibited or wouldn't be allowed under the conditions of that site. So based on that and the location along a highway, I felt that the neighborhood commercial zoning designation would be appropriate and would allow for improving some substandard appearances there along sort of a gateway to Pinehurst.
I believe a statement was made that there's a proposal to reduce the curb cuts from 3 to 2. If you add, I mean, I just did some quick math. If they were to do 18, 20 by 70, that's a square footage of a little over 25,000 square feet. Would that sort of building added onto the, not require additional curb cuts?
No, it wouldn't. They would be able to totally limit the number of curb cuts, they being DOT. And a lot of that would be based on what analysis they have, traffic counts they have. At that point in time, there would have to be some sort of finite breakdown of those uses of those buildings so they could get associated trips that would be expected to incur. You know, we've seen trip generation reports with other requests too, so that they could, again, more carefully align and manage the site access there with the merging and the highway traffic. Again, they haven't fully vetted out the widening project. You know, I doubt there will be enough trips that would require anything like a turn lane, but all that would, and likely, and the applicant can speak to this, I know they've had those, that correspondence directly with DOT, but with the topography that's right up here, up against 15501, it is extremely steep right here. So the site access would likely come in and have to come this way again, there's ground parking that would have to be required too, which would eat into that impervious surface that we talked about as far as those calculations. So I wouldn't see, I couldn't conceivably see a third curb cut being on this property if they're going to have them eliminate one.
But they already have either 2 or 3 where the existing filling station is.
Yeah, there's two right here on either side, kind of the canopy, the fueling canopy. Then there is one just further to the south right here that's pretty wide.
Right, so in my dialogue with DOT, they've expressed a desire to see the widening as taking place at the same time as whatever they're going to do with the traffic circle, and that's not till 2031. These gentlemen are not going to wait till 2031 to do something if we grant them the development. So they're going to have to make do with the curb cuts that they have at the moment, either 3 or 2, whichever that is.
Correct, and if any development plans were to come through, or even just, if it's, you're even talking just the redevelopment of that fueling station, DOT could go ahead at that point require one of those curb cuts being abolished. And the plans would be too, we have standards about where the fueling canopies can go. If this were to be redeveloped, they would be pushed much further off the highway, so you wouldn't have that need, or they wouldn't have that need for both of those two almost essentially on top of one another.
But if I'm going to be a potential tenant in this new building, whatever it is, I'm basically going to enter the property at the filling station.
Or just to the side.
Just the edge.
Or just short of it, yes. And then proceed from there to wherever the building is located.
Correct, or wherever the access drive aisle will take you. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, John. I didn't quite get that concept. I was envisioning they'd have a curb cut further down going south, because you basically have a long runway till you get to the gas station, but I guess not.
Just to be clear, that's not the plan.
Carlo, if you would direct me a little bit, where, if you would, north and south, hot or cold, about where the potential, what you have shared in conceptual plans with DOT?
Yeah, it's approximately right where the existing the southern drive.
Okay.
So it's not down to the south of that.
So since Carlo I asked him to speak and he didn't have a microphone, my apologies. Again, I mentioned the topography is very steep right here where the cursor is along this edge of the property. And so he did indicate that where this further southern access is now would be the preferred access.
If we were to go ahead with the recommendation, how long before we see something new about this? So I'm saying, is this you'll be back in 6 months, or you'll be back in, I'm just trying to figure out the time frame of this.
So I can't give you a definitive time frame because
Ballpark.
Well, one thing that we have to do is all the site evaluations. So we have to get a wetland and stream delineation. We have to do an environmental site assessment. So those things, they could take maybe 1 to 1.5 months, and then we have to get a survey team out there to do a boundary and survey so we can actually do our final grading. I know at this time you're securing survey companies, so you probably talked to that.
So we're looking at further than 6 months? I'm not trying to put pressure on you or anything like that. I'm just trying to get a concept. When would we see the fruits of our action, so to speak?
Realistically, sir, probably 6 months to a year before we could
6 months to a
start.
year, okay,
Possibly even longer.
okay.
I think I would offer up just an opinion for my fellow council members that I could think of some other sites that were generally more accessible or had fewer constraints where I would have greater concern. I think they're given the watershed, the topography and what have you, I don't want to say that they're boxed in, but they have less flexibility than might be the case if this were perfectly flat and no river running through it and so forth. Jeremy, would that be your sense also?
Yeah. So in my thoughts, I'll just expand. If this was a total flat opportunity for development and we were R5, back of the envelope figuring, 70 homes could go in. With the topography, obviously that's very, very limited. If we use their 7 to 8 acres and the gas station is there, taking away from that, obviously we're looking at, if it was still R5, we would look at a lot less homes. However, we see builders today building on some very steep topography, taking a lot of risk, certainly in our community. When you go down 15501, you look on the left-hand side, you can see some of that in Testament, taking the risk to build some single-family homes there. So in my mind, we're moving this from single-family homes with a gas station to all of the uses, obviously with an updated gas station, which would include the possibility for some mixed-use residential there. And if they disturbed anything greater than 3 acres, it would come back through a public hearing. So we would see it again, and our community would have the opportunity to have input on it. But some of the positives that's coming to my head here when we look at those uses, and we look at some of the growth of Ward County going north of the circle, let's say, this could have a positive impact on some of the traffic that would go through our circle. As they were looking for some of those uses, if they rented to a dry cleaner or somewhere to eat or something, and that's where they were going, then they could stop there instead of going on through the circle. So that's just some random thoughts there, maybe for us to expand on a little bit further.
I would agree with both of you. I think that I've been out there a couple of times to take a look at it. It seems to me that this is a better use of this tract of land than residential. Certainly R5 is not rural to begin with. And I think that improving the area, including the filling station, would be a bonus to the area. So I don't perceive great risk in this.
The intensity for sure of it all.
I think
I concur. I think as a resident in that part of the village, this site could use improvement, and we could use amenities out there. And I think that this is, I'm favorably disposed toward this.
I will entertain a motion and think we're getting to a consensus there. If we can move to that before or do we need to close this first?
So Dan, I might look to you. So since we kind of closed the regular meeting, should we go back into, close the public hearing?
Yes, I think, yes, correct. Close the public hearing, reopen the regular meeting, and then proceed to consideration of the ordinance.
I move to adjourn public hearing number 1 and re-enter the regular meeting.
Second.
Motion and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now back into our regular meeting, and before us is this 2602 zoning map amendment. Is there anything else you want to say about this piece of paper on the screen right now?
Maybe not the piece of paper on the screen, but maybe the one in front of you that has your detailed options. Again, it's a tricky nuance required by statute that if you're considering especially an approval of a zoning map amendment and one that is deemed to be inconsistent with your adopted plan, you deem it to be, and you also thereby amend the comprehensive plan and also the statement of reasonableness. Shannon and I worked really diligently to try to prepare with not too much of a word salad, all your potential motions there. So study those and just make sure that we do check that box as a requirement of
Does
statute.
the amendment apply just to this parcel or to?
Just to this parcel,
Okay.
or the two subject
Right,
parcels of the request.
These parcels? or-
Correct.
Essentially, even though it may be inconsistent with the current plan, it's sort of deeming it consistent, and amending the plan just for that particular change.
But, right, it does not amend it with respect to other properties in this area of the ETJ?
Correct.
Alex, I was going to ask the question, it sounds like I'm hearing the answer to it, but what's our risk of amending the comprehensive plan in other areas? And it's
None.
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 Okay.
This is specific to the application and these properties.
How often council does this? I'm trying to recall other examples in the past where we
Well,
amended.
This has only been in play now about 5 years since the statutes change regarding this. Usually you just have to consider and comment on whether or not a proposal is or is not consistent and reasonable. But now there's statutes, the General Assembly put a little bit more emphasis on comprehensive planning in North Carolina. Again, I mentioned earlier that local governments were exercising zoning authority without even a land use plan or a comprehensive plan. Now they say you have to adopt one of those and reasonably maintain it, so you actually have some sort of forethought whenever you're considering these type of requests. So this, to my knowledge, would be the first time the village has taken advantage of the one fell swoop approval and amending the plan all at once instead of having to do them in separate actions, which would have been procedurally how it would have had been done before.
I see.
I've seen other municipalities take that same action where it was technically inconsistent with the adopted land use plan, which is essentially just a guide for the council and how you make decisions. And all this really is doing is saying, once we take this action, the land use plan is amended so that this particular action is consistent with the land use plan. So in other words, you're not having to do two actions. We take this action and then we amend the land use plan to make it consistent. It just has the effect of making it consistent.
All righty. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 26-02, amending the Village of Pinehurst official zoning map for 7941 U.S. Highway 15501, and find the requested amendment consistent with the guiding principles 2 and 5 and implementation strategies 2.17 and 7.9 of the Village of Pinehurst 2019 Comprehensive Plan. Further, the amendment is inconsistent with the Conservation and Growth Map, and the map is hereby amended from suburban neighborhood to suburban center for said property. The requested amendment is considered reasonable and in the best interest of the public.
Okay, we have a motion?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion adopted unanimously. Thank you. Look forward to your next visit, and I do think we have enough safeguards in the downstream, so you guys will come up with a good product. Thank you. All right. Let's go on to public hearing 2. Well, we've got the, no, yes, we are. We're going on to public hearing number 2. 275 McCaskill Road, conditional zoning request. Alex?
But so just with respect to the suggestion here, suggestion is that we not recess the regular meeting and merely enter into public hearing number 2?
Correct, yes.
I move to enter into public hearing number 2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now in public hearing number 2, 275 McCaskill Road, conditional zoning. I'll just read this for the record. The purpose of the public hearing is to consider an official zoning map amendment for approximately 2.82 acres of land located at 275 McCaskill Road and further identified as parcel ID number 000255962. The proposed map amendment would zone the property from VP FPD-H&I, Village Place Form-Based District Blocks H&I, to Village Place Form Base District Block H and I, conditional district, and would allow for the development of 2 multi-use buildings totaling 35,000 square feet and associated site features. The property owner is 490 Broad LLC, and the applicant on behalf of the owner is Bogle Firm Architecture. Go ahead, Alex. I read it for you.
I greatly appreciate you doing that, too.
You shouldn't always have to read those. Go ahead.
All right, so I will orient everyone since the mayor's done such a great intro and getting all that in for the record. Again, the public hearing has been duly advertised as required by statute and the Pinehurst Development Ordinance. Okay, if you're looking on the map and following my cursor, we're right now about up here, just off the extent of the map. Here's Magnolia Road coming down to the intersection with McCaskill. McCaskill up toward Rattlesnake, the subject property is right here at the corner. So just adjacent to the Greens apartment complex, and a little bit more on that later. The property is in the Village Place, the newly formed Village Place form-based district, 2 designations of the sub-districts Block H and I. And this request, as required by the Village Place form-based district use table in the PDO, does require conditional district approval. And again, we've got the applicant and the property owner of record there. The request would include 2 two-story mixed-use buildings up to 35,000 square feet and associated site features. Switching gears from the previous public hearing, this is a conditional zoning map amendment, which means that the applicant may propose and the local government may consider site-specific zoning conditions associated with the proposed amendment. Those conditions do need to be mutually agreed upon and consented by the owner. A general concept plan is required and has been provided by the applicant, and that itself becomes a site-specific development plan and a zoning condition. As with the previous proposal, the Planning and Zoning Board is required to hold a public hearing and receive public comment and formulate a recommendation to the Village Council. Village Council, as we are this evening, is to hold a public hearing before they can take up consideration of the request. And as we just did, you are to look toward your adopted comprehensive plan and any other plans and comment on the proposal's consistency and reasonableness. So here is our very colorful Village Place form-based district zoning. As you can see, and most are familiar with these sub-blocks. So here's the intersection of McCaskill and Rattlesnake Trail, subject property and development area being the hatched properties here. Again, designation of Block H and I, adjacent to Block J. Across McCaskill, you have the core block areas in the Village Place district and some other form-based district properties on the other side of Rattlesnake Trail. It does back up on the north side to the village-owned property here, zone public conservation, and again, we are about right here currently. As you see, there's a lot of existing footprints in the surrounding area, multifamily apartment building here, vacant lot just to the east at zone neighborhood commercial, and then a mix of commercial and office spaces across McCaskill Road and Rattlesnake Trail. So again, two-story buildings. The breakdown is one building a little over 15,000 square feet. That's the one that is fronting along Rattlesnake Trail. The McCaskill Road frontage being a little larger at 19,600 square feet. Parking is in the rear. And again, this is in the village's corporate limit, so not in our ETJ. Here's a snipped image of the general concept plan. It does include 15% proposed open space. There is an 8% minimum in the Village Place form-based district. All parking lot landscaping will be required and is generally depicted with the green areas on the plan. Stormwater management obviously will be required on site, and the applicant is proposing to manage that with an underground detention basin right here where my cursor is toward the north end, just under the parking lot. Water and sewer are available and will be served by Moore County Public Utilities. A neighborhood meeting was required as part of this proposal, as with the other one. The applicant has provided a report. Access will be, you have the existing access off McCaskill Road that was installed as part of the greens, and new access will be just here off Rattlesnake. A sidewalk will be required and is depicted here on the general concept plan, matching our brick detail along Rattlesnake Trail With the infrastructure that was installed associated with the Greens Apartments development, there is an existing sidewalk there along McCaskill. So there's a total shown on the general concept plan of 137 parking spaces. There are some that are provided in some detached garages, tabbed to be for the residential units on the second floor. Note on the general concept plan indicates two type of scenarios depending on the range of uses that could be associated with the mixed use approval. And it really depends on whether or not there's a restaurant type use or not. There is no conditions proposed with this conditional zoning, which is a little unique. But absent any condition relative to the minimum or maximum amount of parking to be provided on this, the parking requirements of the PDO would apply, and the applicant would have to show that they've met that requirements before site plan approval.
What is the requirement? Parking?
It depends on the range of uses. So right now, all we have is a square footage. Some of the uses are based on square footage. Actually, most of them are. Others may be based on, previously we had a requirement for restaurants to be based on number of seats to serve. We've made an adjustment with our new PDO. However, this applicant, because this is a multi-phase development, and this application was accepted and a decision had not yet been made by the time the new PDO became effective, they will be able to have permit choice as long as they move forward within a certain amount of time for some of those applicable standards.
It just seems, that number seems like a very large number of parking spaces. Maybe my math is all wrong, but.
I mean, if you look at it, obviously the bulk of the area is captured by surface parking. So anyway, absent any condition, staff would have to work with the applicant to review based on what they're proposing, the breakdown of that square footage to be, what the minimum number of parking, off-street parking to be provided. Any subsequent changes in use within that footprint would also trigger a review by staff to ensure that the minimum number of parking, i.e. if a new use came in that required a more intense parking count, then we'd have to ensure there was adequate parking on site. So here's a little bit about the dimensional criteria. The dimensional criteria that was applied largely on these two blocks in the Village Place form-based district kind of carbon copied what was approved with the 2016 conditional district approval for this property, and largely followed the previous village mixed use dimensional criteria. There is a front build-to line, which you can see on the general concept plan. They are oriented and pushed to the street frontage to activate that area with the pedestrian activity, and the parking hid in the rear. We do have, obviously, the lot criteria is all met, a little bit additional minimum open space provided, and the rear setbacks, of course, are met. And again, typically, we do see with conditional zoning requests some conditions to vary or impose stricter standards for the dimensional criteria are requested, not the case here. So some of you may remember in 2016, the property did receive a rezoning approval and an entitlement. This area, I'm going to kind of outline it here on the previous proposal. Generally, this area here, and it was depicted as phase 2 on that approval. As we know, that never moved forward. As you can also see with the footprint and the layout is largely consistent with the general concept plan that has been submitted as part of this application. In 2023, when we enacted and implemented the Village Place form-based district, that changed the zoning on these two property, or this property into those two blocks. And again, we kind of carbon copied the standards and the uses that were approved from that 2016 approval over into blocks H and I in the new Village Place district.
Were we required to do so, or was that a conscious decision?
At the time when we were reviewing that, that's been, 2.5 years now since that has been passed. At that time, they were still vested. That vesting has changed now, so we wanted to make sure that we honored, and I think Jeremy probably recalls when we were having hours and hours of planning and zoning board meetings, we kind of just understood that was the intent of what was going to happen there, and that had kind of already been decided, and we didn't need to make any significant changes or departures from that.
But again, we were not obligated to do so. We made a decision to do so for whatever reason.
I'll go with the latter. The applicant has provided some elevations. Now, I understand that for those who don't look at these very often, they are very static and two-dimensional and lack a little bit of depth and profile. I know the applicant can speak quite a bit more to sort of went into their design of the buildings. Oddly enough, one of the conditions of that 2016 approval for this phase of that development was that the review of the architecture of that second phase were to come back before Village Council for consideration. So Village Council still gets to consider sort of that design. There was it's kind of hard, it's not legible on this image, but on the elevation sheet, there was some spoke to different and breaking of the materials there. So this, if you're looking here, this is the McCaskill roadside elevation. Sorry. And then this gray area would be turning toward Rattlesnake. So here's the McCaskill roadside elevation. Again, you're looking right at the corner of the intersection. So here's McCaskill Road, the turn down Rattlesnake, and if you're looking straight on at Rattlesnake. Okay, we're back to plan consistency. We're talking about our comprehensive plan again. Again, we need to consider those whenever we're looking at these type requests. We've kind of pulled apart a couple areas that we think are appropriate. Here is the subject property here on a scenario plan. This is identified as focus area 4. The comp plan said you need to create a small area plan for this area. We've checked that box. We've got that in the form-based guidance plan, and it does talk about the appropriate designation being mixed-use stacked residential. And again, we adopted the small area plan and form-based guidance plan for the Village Place area this property is located. We did, again, tab that area as mixed use with office and retail on the ground floor or second floor, and residential only available on the second floor. There are recommendations in there for how to handle street design, of course, site design, pedestrian connectivity, locating parking in the rear, and some architectural design. The plan is consistent, the proposed general concept plan is consistent with our adopted plans. And furthermore, there's a regulating plan that sort of spoke about what the appropriate building types, think of use and size and height, should be in this area. Here are the areas there, and again, it's kind of hard to see at this detail, but it does have the designation of 1 for mixed use, and also 1, 2, 3, which is mixed use office and retail, and building height 1 to 2 stories. Planning and Zoning Board took this proposal up in their December 4th meeting. They did discuss a lot about the history of the rezoning from 2016 and how things have gone since we enacted the form-based districts. And there was some discussion on the parking, and again, kind of how what I've already talked about, what scenarios apply based on what uses will occupy that square footage. The board unanimously recommended approval and found it to be consistent with Guiding Principle 2, the Implementation Strategy 2.8, and the comp plan, and found it consistent with both the Village Place Small Area Plan and Form-Based Guidance Plan. Staff will conclude the same, that this proposal is very consistent with the 2019 Comprehensive Plan land use designation for that area, or at least a scenario for that area. It kind of deferred to the village adopting a more detailed small area plan, which we did and completed and implemented in 2023. The building type and the dimensional standards all check the boxes of what we codified in the Pinehurst Development Ordinance as well. So with that, we would recommend approval of the conditional zoning request. We do believe, however, if there are more considerations of site-specific development conditions that come with the discussion and deliberation, public comment, depending on what those conditions are and how they're worded, staff would be supportive of that as well. And Village Council action, you're obviously in the duly advertised public hearing. You're considered your comp plan, adopted plans, Planning and Zoning Board, staff recommendation, and public comment. If you feel the need to, you can continue the hearing again to a specified time, date, and place. If you do conclude the public hearing, then you can consider the request and you can consider approval by enacting an ordinance. You can reject the amendment, you can defer the action to another specified meeting date, and you can, as always, refer the proposal back to Planning and Zoning Board. So that concludes my presentation on the conditional zoning request. Happy to answer any questions, and I'll just kind of leave this slide here up, kind of a little bit of a background.
Remind me, did this, maybe I'm confusing properties. Did this go to through the HPC also, or this just is
This is
planning
just
zone?
outside the historic district. Yep.
Gotcha.
So just across Mccaskill and Rattlesnake is the boundary
I
of
got
the
it.
local historic district.
Confusing it with something else. Now I mentioned my question earlier about, sort of odd, it seems like there's too many parking spots, but now I think I understand. You gotta sort of cover your bets here a little about what might or might not be the type of renter in the particular space.
And I think it would be appropriate to ask the applicant,
Yeah.
If it's all, lawyers' offices and CPAs, it's less parking, but what happens if it turns into restaurants? How are they going to handle that?
Right.
And
it could-
not to
it'll
say
change
worst
over
case
time.
scenario,
It'll
but I
change.
think that's what they provided. And there's a note on there, 2 different scenarios, sort of like the least intense parking need based on the use breakdown, and sort of like the most intense, which is what you see here with the 137.
Other questions for Alex? John?
I've got 3 kind of what I call smaller ones and one perhaps larger one, which may be more for the board. But on one of the slides, there was something that the max impervious surface was 70%, and the open space was 8%, and I'm wondering where the other 22% falls.
Yeah, so again, that's kind of, when we adopted the Village Place Form-Based District, when we put the recommendations from the small area plan and form-based guidance plan, some dimensional criteria into the PDO, that's what we took into account. It's like how open space is really supposed to be used. Like, you can't use stormwater management for that area, right? So in Village Place, it's not as applicable or appropriate as in Pinehurst South, where you have large vacant land masses that you want to really preserve certain area to be dedicated as defined open space. In the Village Place Form-Based District, it's more just to try to provide some sort of buffering. There's just a cap. You got to do at least 8%, that's open space that you can't get credit for in other ways, and then 70% still your maximum of impervious.
So the 8% is a minimum, whereas the 70% is a maximum?
Maximum, yep.
Got you, okay. Topography. There was a previous proposal for development of a medical office here some years ago. And I seem to recall, it might even have been me asking the question, I thought there's a reasonable sloping from that building down to the parking area of the Greens at the Arboretum. And the previous plan, the parking looked like it would be difficult. Am I misremembering that? I drove by the property again a couple of times, but.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you would consider significant drop. It's not unworkable, I don't think. And if you notice, the property's been, again, because there's been some of the infrastructure, especially that where it would have that drive aisle connectivity between the 2 development parcels, the existing parking lot and what this area would be. I think it's fair to say that most of the topography or slope kind of goes back toward the village-owned property over here.
So you don't envision sort of tiers of parking as a result of the topography?
I don't think there will be tiers, no. It will be all ground surface, yep.
Go ahead, sorry.
Stormwater. We've had lots of discussions about that. I'm assuming that the stormwater that's proposed now is to the 10-year, to accommodate 10-year rainfall amounts. Is that the standard? I think I heard in a different context.
So that is our adopted standard, so that would be our absolute minimum threshold to be met. With general concept plans, that detailed calculation and infiltration tests and everything else that's required to understand what the capacity would need to be, the size, is not required. At this stage, it's just the general depiction and the type of stormwater management that will occur on site. So I'm more than welcome to let the applicant speak a little bit more to how far of an analysis they've gotten into how that's going to be managed, if they've been able to get that far. But right now, they're just required to depict the general type and area.
But it would be permissible for us to insist as a condition some higher standard than the minimum.
It could be permissible to have that discussion with the applicant. They would have to consent to considering that.
I'm sorry.
The two parties have to agree, that's my
So
understanding.
we could not set it then as a condition that would effectively be a negotiated item, to which both parties would have to agree.
You can, yeah, absolutely, you can enter that into the discussion with the applicant, but there again, both parties would have to agree. They get the final call on whether or not they would consent to that.
So in terms of what we will do tonight, if hypothetically we're going to approve something, that is not a condition we can unilaterally impose.
Correct.
As part of our approval.
Correct.
The third one, it is both specific to this, but it is broader, because this is essentially the first property that would constitute development in Village Place. And will not necessarily be precedent-setting, but could begin to serve as a pattern or a model for subsequent architecture. And I'm thinking only on the exterior facades here. I think one of the things we as a council are going to have to consider if, as, and when more proposals for development of Village Place come, is the degree to which they are consistent with what exists in the downtown area, some of which I would describe as clapboard and some as brick exterior. And I think we are going, as a council, need to be very careful about that, so that as Village Place develops over whatever time frame, it is not competitive with, it is compatible with and compatible with the existing downtown.
I expected you to say to congruent based on your time on the HPC.
Thank you. I couldn't come up with the word, but that is exactly the word, yes.
Or not incongruous with. So the form-based guidance plan does have some, it was intended to try to have some additional architectural detail there for the village to consider in reviewing these application types. That it's actually it's quite detailed in some cases related to the glazing and fenestration for certain buildings, but certainly the building materials and how the building material shall be or should be considered in using, light materials over heavy materials. And so there's a lot of guidance there that, the village council can obviously consider when reviewing such applications.
I mean, as I observed in the past, it's wonderful that we built a new elementary school here. You could pick that up and put it in almost any suburb anywhere in the country. It doesn't look like Pinehurst, per se. I would hope that whatever we end up approving here would look like Pinehurst, not exactly because we're not building this in 1895, we're building it now. Okay, thank you, Alex, that's...
One question. There's one way in and one way out for a vehicle here. Is that right?
Right now.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand. As I look at the outline of the property, I'm trying to figure out where is there another entrance for a
So,
car?
okay, can you find my cursor?
Go ahead.
Sorry, so I'm up here on Rattlesnake now, right?
I think I get that one.
Yep, and then the one that's existing there on McCaskill now that was installed with the Greens apartment.
Wait, both of those are currently existing.
Or both of them, sorry.
Well, yeah, so where, the one that you pointed to on McCaskill,
Okay, right here.
that drives into just a lot right now? or-
Yes.
Okay, so that's.
And then there's just one simple connection here, kind of, that just kind of comes through. Again, it ties into the existing parking lot, but none of this other
So
access aisles or
Once
parking
I
there.
drive in either the Rattlesnake or the McCaskill area, I can't enter into the greens.
You could.
How would I do that?
So you can see how this is laid in with the existing this is all existing here.
Yes, yes.
All right, so here's the proposed network. So you can see, you can just come right around and through.
There's no fencing there. That's
So-
a property boundary.
Okay, that's a property boundary.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, it looked to me, I was thinking it's enclosed. It's not. Someone could pull in here and make a left turn to go into the greens.
Yes.
Okay, and they could come in Rattlesnake and drive straight down and go straight into the greens. Interesting. Is that required for fire or safety reasons, or is that something the property owner wanted to do, or?
It's just good land planning, to be able to utilize that existing, infrastructure there, so you're not all bottling at one point or a junction or another. And if you see let me see, the previous approval, you see that this was always contemplated.
Well, there have been some properties where I think the fire department has required multiple access points, so this is more efficiency than requirement here.
Right now, yes. Obviously, emergency access does prefer as many points of egress and.
Are they
can-
driving out on McCaskill on a flat piece of road, or is that on the slope?
It's at grade.
It's
Right
at-
at the apron, yes.
it's at
'Cause-
grade.
Yeah, because right here, you're looking sort of at the top of the hill, right?
About where the hill
Yeah,
starts
so
to go.
now it goes, and it just drops significantly down.
I'm fine. Now I understand it. I had thought the property line was fencing everybody in. It's not. It's just the property. It's not the access. Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we have the applicant come forward? I guess I'll copy onto the tail end of John's there. Obviously, I have a few questions about parking and all, but I saw the proposal at the Planning and Zoning Board and was very thoughtful. I was trying to figure out what would be my general thought or concept on this. And once this is finished, and there are other developers who are thinking of developing here in Pinehurst, particularly in our Village Place area, what I would hope to be able to do is to drive them by this development and say, this is an example of what we're looking for, rather than driving them by that and not thinking that way. So as you talk about facades and materials and all, the downtown brick and white clapboard and all that, which is sort of the familiar view that people have historically about the ambiance of the village of Pinehurst. If there's a way to make this look a little like that, or as much as you can, I think it would be helpful to the character and ambiance of our village. So that's just my general thought. I'm not getting into the details of restaurants and accounting firms and all. I mean, I think that's the marketplace will determine that, and you all probably will come up with your own potential tenants and all. But the building itself is going forward. The tenants will change. Okay. Please introduce yourselves so we can go on.
My name's Rihanna Smith. I am legal counsel for the applicant.
I'm Pete Bogle. I'm the architect.
Bogle, got you. Well, please, go forward.
I just want to reiterate a little more about the background of this project. As staff had mentioned, this started in 2016. We are presenting with you the substantially same concept plan that was approved then. And between 2016, this was a phase 2 that didn't move forward as everyone had hoped, as timely. And so in the interim in 2021 is when the small area plan was approved here, and it made this a conditional zoning requirement. Because we didn't build this within the time when our right vested, then we're coming back before you to get approval of essentially the same plan. And the reason we're really not asking for any additional conditions on this is because those conditions were already added into what was here before, and we are happy to agree to all of those and then go a little bit further on it. And so with that, our perspective is the project really has stayed consistent this whole time with what the town has wanted, and along with its iterations with the 2021 plan, the comprehensive plan, your village-based form plan. So we're happy to answer any questions you have. I'm going to let Pete go through and talk about the planning and his beautiful vision.
All right. So this is, what you see on the screen right now is the narrative for the conditional district submittal that we did submit to the village. Just summary, there are two buildings, the McCaskill building and the Rattlesnake building. McCaskill is 9,800 square feet footprint, 2 stories, 8 two-bedroom apartments on the second floor, and the lower level will be mixed commercial use. Rattlesnake building is similar. It's 2 stories, 7,700 square foot footprint, with 6 two-bedroom apartments upstairs and mixed use on the ground floor. Both of the buildings are going to have brick facades, aluminum storefront windows on the ground floor, aluminum clad windows, operable windows for the apartments upstairs, adding in balconies to create some depth, some visual depth along there. We did spend a lot of time in your guidelines, in the village guidelines, about how to create an architecture that is congruent or not non-congruent with. Love HPC talk, but doesn't try to replicate and become something that's false history, something that does fit in well and establish a new district. There are also a couple of accessory structures, 2 private parking garages, which is a use that's already established there on the greens there beside of us. And just to clarify and reiterate, the 2 driveway entries are existing today. That's a paved path that goes all the way through the site right now, and we're maintaining exactly where those are. All right, moving forward here. This was our neighborhood meeting that we had. We did hold one. No one showed up, but the right number of folks were contacted, and so nobody complained. The site, which Alex has already shown, and actually that identified who all was contacted. And those are the people, the property line. And
Could you go back up just for 1 moment to the properties that were contacted? Down, that page right there, just. Okay, thank you.
This to be able to show the full screen. Oh, right up here.
Yep.
Existing site plan, very few trees, just some, one mature tree that's not in great health, and then a few little trees along the edges. And existing today, here you can see the existing drive that goes all the way through. As Alex presented, we are within the form-based district zoning, meeting all the guidelines there. You've seen this already. Quick conversation about the parking. We do, this is the one with our parking calcs up here. Yes. So we did 2 scenarios with the parking counts. One is if everything on the ground floor is general retail or office, things that are per square foot parking based. And you see the total number of required parking spaces with that type of use plus the apartments is a total of 71. But if some larger areas on those ground floors end up being restaurants, then that really kicks up the parking requirements, and that's where we end up with potential 136. 137 is provided. Parking is something that would be submitted and finalized as we do construction drawings. If tenants are identified during that time before construction drawings are finished and we think they're all retail, then we would build probably closer to the 71 total parking spaces. But as was also mentioned, if a restaurant ever comes into play, then the applicant would have to provide enough parking spaces to fulfill the needs. Mixed use is fun like that.
Yeah, Pete, to that point, so I'm assuming those at the far north would probably be the last, and they just leave it vacant.
Correct.
And then if you needed to build more,
correct,
that's where it would be.
All right, this is the base concept grading plan. So just showing that we've got a civil engineer working on that already. You've seen the two-dimensional drawing, so I'm going to bring you into some actual renderings here that we've done. These are concept renderings. Showing a little bit of 3-dimension here, once I get him over here, of how this site would lay out. And the potential looks of the buildings along McCaskill.
You say they're all two-bedroom apartments?
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Yep, and this is the corner of McCaskill and Rattlesnake. Seeing the McCaskill building here with the nice lady waving at us up here. And then the Rattlesnake building.
Do you envision them as rentals or as condos that are available for purchase, or?
I have to ask the owner that one.
Just wanted to suck him into the table here.
That's right.
Richard Vincent. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. Probably condos at this point is what we thought. And a lot in Pete's design, as you can see here, is actually, although this won't go through HPC, this is modeled off having gone through HPC on a project on the corner of Kelly and McIntyre, and taking the feedback from that project, making tweaks and trying to improve on it. So, Mayor Pizzella, to answer your question, yes, we've heard, we've listened, we've implemented, and we've tried to improve. Yeah.
And then this is one more image from Rattlesnake looking back toward the corner at McCaskill. And some brick potentials that we've looked at. Nothing's nailed down yet, but something in these families. And then just to reiterate, yes, we are following exactly what the form-based district is requesting of us. We are mixed use, which is the one item that's listed on our site here, and we're 1 to 2 stories allowable. And our table of conditional uses, all of the ones that, and this is out of the village's submittal package, and then the requirements, and then the requested condition. You can see we've just said none and no modification on every one of these because we either meet or exceed. And then that's the parking discussion again. Same thing on those tables. And the uses, not looking at modifying any of the permitted use table. It's mixed use.
Go back to that one just for a minute, sorry. Thanks.
And that was the last slide.
Oh, okay.
I think just on the parking, so, you know, obviously wanted to be transparent and show you the least amount, the most amount. A lot of this is going to be determined through the process, but you already have the guidelines and the checks and balances to do that. Based on the uses, we'll have to meet those parking requirements for those individual uses, so it'll be fleshed out through the process with staff. What we've seen on the other project we have is there's a lot of tenants that are just looking to grow and expand. Whether it's a chiropractor, an investment or a wealth manager or an accounting office or a bakery, coffee shop, whatever, a woman's boutique store, and a lease is coming up a year from now, a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, and they're looking for, obviously it's so vibrant in the core, they're looking for 2-3 times their square footage. So we've taken what we've learned there and said, hey, we want the flexibility here to be able to accommodate not national chains, but the existing businesses within Pinehurst that want to grow and enlarge their footprint. So we wanted to be flexible, give us the widest swath of parking. But as we said, if we don't have to put 137 spaces, we prefer not to. And as that minimum requirement of open space is 8, and we're at 15%, so we've almost doubled it already, our goal would be to create even more open space on this property. So.
But the other important thing was to be able to show that we are able to provide that number of parking spaces if those uses come in. It does work.
Have you done developments before with the underground retaining order? How does that work? 'Cause-
Fantastically here. My office, I'm from Rowan County. We live on clay. It does not work there. Your sandy soils here are fantastic. I was the architect on the Village Chapel Heritage Hall. That's the exact type of system that we use there as well.
Oh, okay.
And that one, we were required to meet greater than just the 10-year because of the flood area that it sits in and the issues they had there around Azalea. So, functions fantastically.
Questions?
And so, just a couple, and more to check the box. This is somewhat described as kind of phase 2 from the Greens at the Arboretum, but there's no joint ownership or ownership relationship between 490 and, okay. And both buildings would appear to, the square footage is around 1,200 square feet for the two-bedroom apartments, just 9,800 divided by 8 and 7,700 divided by 6. Is that,
Minus the common space.
and that's heated square footage?
Yep.
To get away from what was a controversy before. If you're, as you develop this, and understand you're going to be somewhat driven by market demand in terms of is there a restaurant that wants to go in there or not? If you really only needed 70 or 75 parking spaces, what would you envision doing with the rest? Is there room for a third building?
We actually looked at some concepts of putting a third building back in the back, and that started to fall apart with some other requirements of having to front buildings to the street, those kinds of things. So no, we don't have any plans of the current
So you just
time.
wouldn't pave that and it would remain either undisturbed or undeveloped?
Correct, or it could be something we could look at in the future. Yeah.
I think the only thing from the staff perspective is, say the restaurant comes in, we don't want to have to chase Richard down to be like, you needed to put in 20 more parking spaces, but I think that there's a relationship there and it can work.
Well, seeing as you're the neighbor and you own the property next door, it may be a strategic reason to leave it open if we don't need it, so who knows?
Question?
Hi,
Oh, no. Hey, from my understanding, certainly we want to be respectful to, not only any vested rights, but implied rights as well as certainly what was there. You made a statement that said we didn't build this previously within that vested time frame from the 2016 approval. What year did those rights end again from
So
this?
arguably, it's 5 years.
5 years,
from-
2021?
Yeah,
Okay,
so,
And the current owner obtained this property at what year?
I don't know that.
Okay.
We're purchasing it from them. But as we understand it, and you may jump in here, but
Oh, it's okay,
as we understand it, had the small area not been put in place, this meeting tonight would not be happening in this capacity. The small area plan, the additional requirements we'd have to meet, this was already approved, we'd be coming forward and saying, hey, guys, what do you think of the design? We love it.
No, I totally understand. I'm just trying to keep I'm trying to walk with inches here, honestly.
I had a discussion with Mr. Hartzog about the vesting and what that looked like, and because some of the comments from 2016 were a little like coming back for approval, but we weren't sure of what, right? And so just to make sure this was done cleanly, without any issue, even though the vested right and the conditional uses really are virtually the same.
Sure.
We just want to check all of our boxes. So we're not contending that that still is in place.
No, I totally understand. We just want to be respectful, and I do as well. Because one thing that I did notice, the GIS, is that the current owner actually purchased the property in 2022, which was even then after the time frame that those vested rights were completed. So, and obviously, when we built the form-based codes in the area, we referred back to some of that to build this today. So I just want to make sure I was clear in my understanding of during those purchase timeframes, the vested rights and all of that. Do you mind going back and looking at your general site plan here when we look at the parking? When we, obviously tree canopy is so important to Pinehurst. when we look at your site today, obviously you're not inheriting a lot of trees, right? You don't have a lot of opportunity here. So whatever you're going to include here in these islands are going to be what's in the PDO, I would assume, and what's your opportunity. Can you just expand on that, what you see those type of trees being, as well as expand on today, the only tree that's on your site is a really old oak tree that's right in the front of this thing. Do you see any opportunity to save that? And can you tell me about what kind of trees you're speaking about inside of your islands?
Yeah, the oak tree looks like, not an arborist, but it looks like it's been hacked to accommodate power lines
It
running
has,
around it.
some of it,
That doesn't look to be in good health. You know, as you said, on the HPC side, obviously, we want to look at does clearing of the trees infringe the canopy? Does it impact the site? For the most part, the whole site is clear cut. So for us, whatever we're going to bring to the site is going to improve it. Obviously, we would want to meet PDO, and if we have the ability to go beyond that, whatever you're looking at here would be very rudimentary as far as we haven't gone down the process with a full landscaping plan to show, you know, so if you're looking at this and you're saying it doesn't look like a lot, well, further on down the process, we will have plans that will meet, at the very least, the PDO, and ideally go beyond it if we can.
This is general concept plan.
Really have been made on your side, real quick.
Right.
Okay. So back to your two brick examples, if you don't mind. So when we walk around the village, and of course, something that to me is very, very important as well as I think much of our public, when we talk about congruency and compatibility, is not just our uses and the form of the building itself, mass and scale, but it's also the architectural design. When we think about that, certainly where we're building at. When we walk through our village today, we don't really see a lot of the lighter brick that's on that lower side. I want to talk through that with you, and I want to know if you're willing to have those type of conversations, because I think that's where we can ultimately, hopefully, just come to some understanding how you're going to meet not only the congruence, but the compatibility within the rest of our village.
It's really owner preference in how we select our brick. This is what we've shown so far. It's not uncommon. So in some of the other infill projects that we've done in other historic districts, things like that, we have done some that are two-tone brick, similar like this. Sometimes we do them all out of the same color brick, and you can see with these, we've set up a lot of ins and outs to create all the shadow lines that's what makes masonry construction so nice looking sometimes. If I can get over here a little closer. So each of these panels, you know, there's steps in the bricks. There's soldier course bricks at the top of each of the piers. This is an inset piece. There's a soldier course across here, another step out. Going to a single color of brick on this building, it would still have a lot of definition all the way across. Using a different color brick. I mean, all of that, I'm open to. I'm looking to Richard because it's his building.
No, that's not my building, but no, we are. And what I would say is if you look at this on a laptop screen or a PC, it comes out a lot darker than showing in presentation. We've always liked the look of the brewery and what they did there as sort of a benchmark, sort of threshold. I know on the standard side, there's a lot of brick variations that you sort of get to choose from. Our preference is more on the darker side, and you know, obviously it's something we'd be willing to work with, whether it's this tone of brick or this tone of brick. Our goal was not to be this light and to be darker, but as the application before us, it is hard because obviously what we're looking for is a zoning approval to start civil design and then get later on into full building design. And so really for us, unlike the prior application, obviously they don't require a general concept plan at this, but just to produce renderings and go to this stage for this part to kind of get the blessing to be able to move further along, I think we would absolutely sit here and say, you have our commitment, we would work with you, and it would look a little darker than this for sure. And we have flexibility on the tones of bricks. We do like the two-tone, not completely night and day, but similar hues of a brick that complement one another, but have a have a distinguishing difference where at least you can pick up the details that Pete was just talking about. But our benchmark vision has always been something off the brewery. We just love what they did. We feel like that's a sort of crown jewel of the village.
Full disclosure for those who don't know, Richard and I served together on HPC. He succeeded me as chair. When you look at downtown, it's not all the same. Even the brick is not all the same. You know this as an architect. And so I think what I personally am looking for is that sort of commitment. And yeah, the Agora building doesn't look like the First Bank building or the Harvard building. So we know it's not going to be cookie cutter, and these awnings are going to look newer than the awnings that there's going to be some non-congruous nature just by virtue of the fact that these are brand-new buildings. I think what I'm looking for is the commitment for kind of conceptually to try to be as matching as is possible, given that a perfect match might not even be desirable, number one, and might not even be possible. Because people, to Pat's point, 3 or 4 years from now, people coming in to say, what can I do, are going to look at this. I think this is a very interesting concept. I don't want any of my questions to suggest that I'm against it or negative on it. I think we need to be careful about how it's done, but this could be very exciting.
If you could just add a green metal roof, it would just look great. Just look like it really belongs.
Well, if you're looking for our commitment, you have our commitment. And I don't know everyone up here, but I know John, Pat, and a few of you, and Pete, and his background in the village, the work he's done, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we fully understand this is a watershed project for this corridor, and we understand that we could start here and we could run towards 211, and we fully believe this will give other owners incentive to be able to invest in their properties, and maybe they were waiting for something like this in order to do that. So we understand that there's a responsibility that we bear on our shoulders, and that means a lot to us. So yes, you have.
Could be
our
very
commitment.
catalytic, absolutely.
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
And that's my intent, is to open up the conversation really for the remainder of the board to have those who are comfortable with that understanding. I mean, obviously your background and your background as well, you see some things that I don't, and then vice versa. So I'm really gauging your openness to have the conversation. And I'm really gauging how open that we can be, that this is the result that we would get, upon the approval. Because again, I think that congruency is utmost important. We're not looking to pick. If I wanted to pick, we would talk about how the doors, much of the village has insert entryways, and that much glazing out front is going to look a little bit modern. But at the end of the day, that may be okay. We might be okay with that, but those are conversations that I think that we should definitely have about this building before we move forward.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a watershed project.
Sure.
And we'd be completely open to those, because there's going to be ideas that folks on this board come up with that, could save money, could not save money. But it could be an addition that said, hey, let's have this brick be this building, the slightly larger building be this darker hue of brick, and this building, let's break it up with some of these tones, and we'll sit down and go through it as a group. And at the end of the day, if it's something that the village is going to be happy with and more supportive of, it's going to be something we want to talk about and review and sincerely pursue, because we live in this community. This is a big part of us, and we want to make sure we leave a project that everyone is proud of, so we can move on to others. So,
Out of curiosity, what is on the roof? Is it just utilities?
typically, you would HVAC units.
HVAC,
things
okay,
like that.
okay.
So you don't see them on the ground. You don't have all these unsightly screenings. I know in downtown Pinehurst, we've had countless where we've had screening requirements and ambiguities in our standards about how we screen units and what we do, and staircases, and it's a cleaner look. Easier for maintenance. There's a lot of things.
Sounds great.
Any open space on the roof for residential use at all?
None is planned at this point, no.
We have height requirements that we have to adhere to as well, which is 35 feet.
We would have to extend stair towers up above that roof.
Okay.
Unplanned.
You're offering a variance.
I'll let you go a little higher. We can, yeah.
Rooftop deck.
Well, that's why we're having this conversation, because if the variance was the right thing to do for us all, then I think that's what the conversation we have.
No, it was actually, I think it was Mr. Mayor Pizzella that made this comment about a year or two ago on another project, and we were just noodling over some ideas, but this is a higher section, topography-wise, this is a higher section of Rattlesnake, where I think the comments were if this was next to the brewery or something in a slightly lower area, it may be more fitting and it wouldn't stick out as much because you wouldn't be at such a high point in the village where it'd be so noticeable. So those are things that obviously we took to heart and have implemented here. Would we love stair-top towers and rooftop decks? Do we think a lot of condo owners would like that? Absolutely. But it would be more noticeable. It would be coming down Rattlesnake from 211. When you turn the bend past the little the shortstop, I think you would see those, and it would just, it would detract from that tree canopy and whatever's a little bit further behind it, closer to the brewery, so.
You touched on heading down towards 211, which is, I'm glad to hear that. But, which prompts me to raise an issue that I often raise, and that is, how do we work with Duke Power and the village to put the utility poles that are along Rattlesnake that cover your entrance there underground?
That's just some of the fun of working with Duke Energy.
Oh, you have fun too then?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
yes.
You have more
always
leverage
fun.
than us.
Oh, I wish that was the case.
Like to work with you if that's possible, because I think if we begin with a clean slate there, as you go down the road, it will trickle down.
Right, and that's something we've run into on other projects before, when a municipality requires a build-to line that's right up along the street, and you've got a multi-story building, and there's power lines right outside the
it's
window.
awful.
What do you do with that? Do you work with the utility, and you get those moved, relocated, or put underground?
Right. I mean, it does make a difference. You can just go down Magnolia near the brewery, and it's a visual difference. And if they weren't there, it'd be a lot cleaner look. And I would see this as a Rattlesnake, although not a gateway, it's one of the entranceways to the village, and both to Village Place and eventually to downtown Village. So that would be a nice sort of seamless run. Anyway, I would like to work with you and figure out what we can do to get that.
No,
And
that's-
I'd like to go back to the stormwater management. We had a failure during Chantal. Chantal allegedly 1 in 500-year storm. Based on my experience in other businesses, I think those statistics are not right. I don't know what the right number is, but I think it's more than. So I think being better than a 10-year storm is probably a good idea, particularly given that you do sit up there, and that's going down into the greens and maybe into the back of the police department, I don't know. But I think that sort of concept with being economically rational would be appreciated as well, because we just don't know. But I think that these statistics are understating the actual probabilities.
And that's true. We've seen some of that, that we're having the 10-year storm every 2 years. The 100-year storm, we've had it 3 or 4 times that I can remember. I'm not quite that old.
Yeah,
But-
exactly to that point.
But this site, we'll look at when we do the infiltration tests, things like that. I have a feeling this one's going to test out really nicely anyway, just given the surroundings. Also, we've got a large kind of drainage area to the north of this site. This site is not one that floods water out onto other properties. So it's actually not. My experience with working with Village Chapel and all the challenges that site had, and the importance to get that underground stormwater management improved to the level that it could help with the surrounding areas. That one was very important. This one doesn't have a lot of those challenges.
Does our existing stormwater management system run along McCaskill anyway?
I'd have to check, but yeah, no, there is a addition.
There's
some
something to
stormwater
tie
inlets
into there
yeah.
beyond just a big hole in the ground to hopefully store water.
The creek at McCaskill and Magnolia, I think there's
Right,
a little
I mean,
flowing into that.
That's where most of it goes.
Right.
Okay, good.
Other comments? Kevin? Barb? No. Okay. I don't have any other comments. I think. So we'll.
Adjourn the public.
we need to actually have
hold
a
on.
public hearing.
We'll ask, yeah. I want to know if we have any public comments. Please come forward.
Yeah, Richard, if you don't mind putting the microphone back up there.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. Just
Okay.
identify yourself
Oh,
and...
Too bad for you. My name's Kathleen Erickson. Some of you here know me. I served on the Neighborhood Association Council. I moved here during the pandemic, and I live in the Greens of Arboretum, so you're talking about my playground. And I was not here tonight to address anything about this, but I was here to support the senior council initiative. And so this is new information to me. I've been out of town for a couple months, and I've been following what's going to happen. I've known from the moment I moved into the Greens that they had the parcel that was going to be built upon. And I've been following it religiously. The last time I had a chance to look at it was October. I had no idea that this was coming or that it had changed hands. And I had no time to inform myself. But while I was here, I did call our manager and ask if she or anybody that she knows had been made aware of this. And she said no. So
I think we saw earlier that the people who lived in the Greens were all notified, or the owner was notified,
well,
excuse me.
that's, okay, that's what I want, that's one point I'm here to speak about, which is, this is the person that does the leasing and should know everything around that entire property, just to kind of have an idea at least. So I'm not holding anybody responsible. I think what it illuminated is perhaps a flaw in the process, in the sense that I consider myself a neighbor if I'm going to, my garage is right next to where the buildings are. And so I just want to illuminate that, you know, notifying an owner that we didn't even know that it had changed hands. The Greens is, and I did leave a message with Shaw Kuster, and there's been no response. So this is just new. So I just wanted to illuminate that. But in thinking about it, I come in and out there 6-7 times a day. The part that's on actually McCaskill. It's impossible to see what's coming because there's no line of vision. My garage is right on there, and it obscures the vision until somebody, especially coming up from Beulah Hill, looks. I've seen more fender benders there, near misses. I can't imagine more traffic coming in and out there, at least not at the width or the sight line that's there. And I do this often. Yes, there is the one that I'm unclear about who owns it. That's off of Rattlesnake. I'm hungry. And that's utilized because many of the trucks can't even come and go. The UPS, the fire department, who I've gotten to know personally, unfortunately, in my stay there, they do not try to come in. As you mentioned earlier, Mayor, about the egress coming in there with a big, the fire trucks do use that. And we're central to everything. I laughingly say that's a good position because I'm near the EMTs, I'm near the police department, I'm near the fire department, I'm near the village hall, so it's great. But what I would like to address a little bit about this going on is just the fact that we aren't aware of it, and I would like us to be prepared to have some sort of a meet and greet or something about it with the people, because I've lived here long enough to know that and society is becoming reactive. And when they start showing, things starting the building process and that, it's going to get a lot of attention, and I would like to be prepared.
Right, I just so we can refresh everyone's memory, letters were sent out to the neighboring property owners, probably to the ownership of the Greens complex. I believe it was advertised in the paper also. That's a requirement, I think, by law.
I suspect it probably was. I'm not questioning.
No, I'm just trying to go through it all so that people who are listening or here would just get familiar with the process. And then there is also, obviously, the notice for this hearing here. And I don't know what I've missed, but there's a lot of, buttons that are touched. So people, and there's some signage up around the property for a public hearing.
There is now. When I left town, there wasn't one.
Well, I don't know. It's been up there for a while.
In fact, we made a complaint there because so much stuff had been left on the corner. We had, when they were repairing that intersection there, which they did a beautiful job at, they had all these signs of beware and everything. 2 of them were left upside down on there, and we had animals that were nesting there and doing stuff. So,
Kathleen, we have contacts with your ownership there, so we can reach out and just let them know.
yeah, I know. That's why I just wanted to bring it up. But I think it's an important piece that you need to know, because the people that live in that building are engaged very much in the community, and but the truthfulness of it is they don't keep up with this stuff nearly as much as I did. And I try to really keep up with it. I think, as you know, that my first thing was when I was traveling and saw the December 7th article that Matt Lamb did. I had read that online while I was traveling. That was my first awareness. Not that I didn't know it was going to be happening, just that it had been done.
Okay.
But,
well, I'd forgotten about the Matt Lamb announcement of this too. So
yeah,
I'll give him credit for that.
So what I'm trying to do is to make sure that when that is started, that there's some sort of interface engagement with people there, and maybe even address, because I'm just a renter there, the fact that the person that's on site there had no knowledge of it until today when I told her about it.
Okay.
So-
Well, point well taken, and we'll,
Looks like somebody thinks that might not be the case, but I'm just presenting what I was told, and I did double check with her during this meeting. And the other part of that is, I'm all for this. We needed it. I knew it was coming. I really wouldn't want to see a restaurant that's just a N of one, but we already deal with all the problems that go on around the alcohol situation in that parking lot, the noise of it, and the whole thing. So basically what I'm saying is, please keep those things in mind. I'm going to be your neighbor.
fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Kath.
your time.
Thank you, Kathleen. Okay. Anybody else like to speak? No? Okay, that ends public comments. Where do we want to go from here? We're ready for,
I think I move to adjourn public hearing 2. We don't have to re-enter the meeting, just to close the public hearing.
Yep.
Right. I move to adjourn public hearing 2.
okay, motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Adopted. Now we are back. Okay, I don't know if anyone has any other comments or any discussion points. Otherwise, we can move forward. Jeremy, is that a hand up?
Well, my hand's always up, but
Okay, I'll go.
just a couple notes point I think the board should discuss, in my opinion. I mean, I really believe that we should make a brick decision. I don't think that's a lot to ask of the applicant. Maybe we talk about that, present it to the village. I think that's an important piece of the congruency, if they would be willing to do that. I also would like to discuss, the landscaping and the tree opportunity there. Make sure that we include some longleaf pines, talk about the longleaf pine canopy, not only throughout the village, but further. I think there's opportunity to include those inside of the parking areas. The Greens have them. the places behind have them. They're inheriting a very barren land. I think that would actually help with a lot of the feeling of compatibility, throughout both pieces of property all around. And I just want to make sure that we discuss that and as well as possibly bring them back into it, so.
I agree those are important considerations. Are they part of this approval process, or is that part of the subsequent discussion with the architect and the property owner? That's a question on my part. I don't know the answer.
Well, I see them as conditions, so, but, yeah, please.
Yeah, maybe Alex, you can walk us through what would the next steps be if, if it was approved tonight? What other input does the village have in the development of this?
So like most developments, it's a multi-step review and approval process. Next step, if it were approved with the general concept plan, would be site plan review and approval by the TRC, which would be what's known as reviewing the construction drawing. So these are the fully detailed and engineered drawings, full landscape plan, elevations with material board. We could start reviewing building material at the same time as the site plan review is ongoing. Once site plan review would be approved, then the building permit could also be approved, allowing the construction of the site infrastructure and the building itself. What we would look for as staff for compliance with our adopted standards. So are the landscape standards met based on whatever the parking lot requirement landscape standards are? Absent any conditions, we're only looking at what the PDO prescribes, and that's the only thing that our decision's bound by. So we're not really looking at how much fenestration or window orientation or balconies or this color of brick versus this color of brick, right? We would just look in general conformity with the general concept plan and all the standards within the PDO.
But maybe at 20,000 feet, the specific thing we're being asked to do is to change zoning from Block H and I, all the other stuff, to Block H and I conditional district.
Only because the Village Place Form-Based District requires this process for that review and approval. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, it's kind of odd that we're seeking a conditional district approval with no conditions. What we do have is that general concept plan, which becomes that site-specific plan. So whatever's approved with that general concept plan, there are a few minor things that could change, such as like increased square footage of the buildings by up to, I believe, 10%. No additional impervious surface can be added. There's major and minor modifications that the PDO prescribes, but other than that, it's just looking at just the development standards.
How would we approve and factor in Jeremy's comments?
Very carefully.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, number one, just because any conditions, again, as we spoke to earlier, they have to be consented by the applicant and the owner, right? Number one. Number two, they have to be clear and objective. They can't make it look nice, right? And so that we can administer whatever those conditions are. There's been times in the past where we have applied some not very sound conditions, and it causes a lot of issue on the administration side of that and the long-term administration of those development conditions. So if you just have to be very clear, very specific in what you're looking for so the applicant can understand what it is you're seeking for, so you can have that dialogue and then mutually agree upon anything, if anything was decided to be needed.
I have a half-baked idea here. We have a verbal commitment to work with us in the direction of what I would call being congruous. And the interesting thing about that, Alex, as you know, is that Congress is not really defined. It's a little bit of almost a Justice Potter sort of concept. Not Sherman Potter, but Supreme Court Justice Potter.
Potter Stewart.
Potter Stewart, sorry, yes. Is it a specific enough condition that we would work to assure congruousness as if this were in the historic district, even though we know that it's not?
Not even close, sorry.
I didn't think so. That's why I said it was a
know.
half-baked idea.
And I understand, and I know what you're trying to get at. You want that feeling of comfort, right? Of that things are going to work out. So it's really, that would only be if you really trust that what was presented to you tonight and the words that were made to you, and you know where Richard lives, you can shake him down to make sure that he's going to do what he says he does. But absent that condition, and again, that's, unfortunately, that's nothing that we could enforce. It's too subjective. There's too many reasonable interpretations on how that could be administered.
Kevin has a
Yeah,
comment.
I think this is very consistent with our long-term vision for this area. I don't think we need to gild the lily here. I think this has been reviewed by staff, it's been reviewed by P&Z, it's consistent with the PDO, consistent with the strategic idea for these properties. I like it. And I don't think we need to improve it or provide conditions around it this evening.
I agree.
Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing is that there's a desire for a sense of comfort that can fit into the approval. And what you're saying is really not.
That conditional zoning, the conditions for conditional zoning aren't the appropriate spot for that.
But you have to have specific articulable conditions that, you know.
Yeah.
I think I would be willing to go down the steps to get those specific architectural conditions. I'm not sure if the whole board would be, or the applicant would be willing to go down those steps. But I think the risk upon the village here is something that's not compatible really for our village. And I think that's something that our citizens request and almost demand. And that's something that I'm just trying to make sure that I follow through on. But Alex, kind of to my point in the question, so the pictures raised even of the buildings and you know, the brick and the courses and the soldering and even the depths of those are those enforceable exactly to the point of those pictures? That's where I'm going. So today they're showing some pictures that we don't even get to enforce. So there's further of a risk of non-congruence that I think that we need to solve before approval of this.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to live by those pictures that they showed us.
I think you've exactly captured what my concern is here, which is not that I think that I can't trust the word, take it for, and not that I think that people will do things that are economically irrational. They're not going to try and build it like it is a strip mall in somewhere else. I just don't know how that last part of belt and suspenders, and it may not even be possible. I don't know.
I mean, any condition we have that we potentially add has to be agreed to by the applicant. Maybe we can ask Richard, like, what his thoughts are, or if.
And again, I think if we know what those, we're going to have to articulate what that standard is and what we're seeking them to do. It's going to have to be that specific and that clear.
I hear you.
So that's probably going to be the hardest exercise.
Let me suggest this. Ms. Smith, counsel for Richard and Mr. Bogle, we happen to have our counsel here. If you could come forward, you have a pen in your hand, can you craft something that we can perhaps bring this to a conclusion? Okay, all right. Well, come forward.
But I think, Alex, were this in the historic district, we've seen COA approvals with specific conditions. I don't think you're telling us we can't really write those here.
You actually have them written already. That's what we were just discussing. In the form-based district guidelines, you have very similar language to what you have in the HPC guidelines about massing, about transparency, about materials, all of those things. So what we've designed is based around all of those guidelines. And we hear you about maybe looking at some darker brick, maybe looking at making this a little bit more congruent with the look in Pinehurst. Go ahead.
And I'm just going to ask, is there a specific color of brick you really like? Do you want white? Do you want black? Black is my favorite color. Like all good lawyers.
Well, let's go with this first, and let's narrow it down. Obviously, no white, no black. Narrow it down to whether we're talking about light or darker, and then that becomes very, very vague, right?
Right.
To you. So that was going to be my request, really to Pete, more than to anything, is Pete, how can you show us something that we can look at as a finished product, we can make a condition on, and that we can feel good that that's what we're going to get in brick color and in basic brick design. I think I'm okay with the building look, and I'm okay with certainly the form and the massing and everything that we have inside of our form-based codes. What we're asking for, or I'm asking for, is maybe some of those more specifics. They can be handed to you, that you can give us, so our concern of congruence with this building is
Yeah.
front.
Well, and I don't want to make light of it and say we're going down a rabbit hole here, but it kind of feels like we are, because even on HPC, you still have the standards in which you play by, and there's a huge swath of brick variations that you can use.
Yeah.
So even if we're saying, guys, we're not in the HPC here, we're missing that check and balance, well, there's even more leniency in that. Our position is you have the mechanisms now to hold us to the fire, which is your small area plan and the guidelines which were put in place by that, which weren't there in 16. So that's additional protections, plus you have the PDO, and that's what we designed to. And you have our commitment as good citizens to say, we'll work with you, and this is to create the vision, this is to create the idea, the direction we're going in, but we've got to get through the zoning piece first before we can even hone this down.
Yeah.
We are in the best position to give you feedback based on a project that we have just one road over that went through HPC, and this is clearly an improvement on that. So if anyone saw those HPC videos and went through it, did the work, this design is even better. And our commitment is to continue to look at ways where we can improve it. So for us, there's more checks and balances than there had been, even if there was HPC governing this particular part of Rattlesnake.
I understand
So
that.
we feel you have those protections. Just our opinion, but it's there to protect you, protect the citizens of Pinehurst.
What would you, please go. Sure.
I think we have those protections. I don't know that it's our job as a council to be picking out faucets.
I don't think we're picking out faucets.
Not faucets.
It-
Brick.
Belt
we're
and
big-
suspenders may not be,
Outside. That's
belt
inside.
and suspenders may not be possible here.
Dan?
One thing you could do, and, it is a little bit vague to say in general conformity with the surrounding area, but at least that would give some indication that y'all are agreeing as a condition to conformity. Now, there's some leeway in that, how that's interpreted, but I think it at least would give maybe some comfort that, they're not gonna put up a bright red building with a yellow roof, that it's gonna be in general conformity.
That's,
Maybe a
that's in the
commitment
form-based
along
district.
those
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
in the form-based district guidelines
Right.
already.
So, I mean, we're comfortable, we've,
Comply with the form-based district guidelines would be a specific articulable rule that you could impose, but it's already there.
Already in there.
we're already
We're already-
bound.
Yeah.
Did you had a pen and pencil, did you actually have something in writing that you were going to propose, or?
No, you've already got it yourself. Under section 5.0 of the form-based guidelines, it includes architectural design recommendations for mixed use.
That's fine, I just didn't
yeah.
know whether you were scribbling something or not, so.
So let me try this. Take us to the next point, the next choke point in this process, if you have approval tonight. When would we or the village staff see you again? When do we,
Yeah, I think Alex was answering that earlier. That would be through the TRC process.
right, but is that 3 months from now? Is it 6 months from now? I'm trying to get an idea, or you're coming in next week?
Not next week.
Okay.
But I would say closer to 6 months, but it'd be
Okay.
it'd be as soon as possible.
Okay, but it's closer, 6
Oh,
months. okay.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure that out.
And it's even compatible with the surrounding area is tough because there's vinyl siding in the compatible area. So I mean, John is nodding along here because we wrestled with this for 6 years on HPC. The term congruity is very loose, and what you hope for is lay people who care about the village to all weigh in and wrestle with these concepts. And it's such a unique village where we've got these amalgamation of designs, and the people who live and play here, they understand what that special character is, and that's kind of what it is. It's more that
Richard,
special
it
character.
sort of goes back to what I what I said initially is about when it's done, when we drive people past it, they're going to say, nod their head yes, rather than, how did you let this happen?
Correct.
And that's, obviously, that's difficult to put your arms around, but you're professionals in this area. And we're trying to figure out, how do we, I think what I hear is, how do we get a sense of as much certainty as one can give in this world of architectural and design, that that's how it would end up.
I'm going to go at it the other way, because I think I tend to agree with Kevin, but, and I'll address this primarily to Alex, but also to Dan. It does not sound like there actually is a specific condition that we could condition this approval on that gets at the concern that you've heard us express. That we're in a little bit of a gray zone here, and at some point, you either...
Alex can correct me, but I mean, you can be as specific as you want. If you want to say it needs to be red brick, you can say it can be red
Right.
brick. But
we're
do
not
we
going
want
to
to do that, is the
We
question.
don't want to do that, I'm quite certain.
Well, and I think what I'm looking for is a little bit of back.
Is there a possibility of agreeing that the council will have some sort of final review of the, design of the building, that y'all would come back with a final design and the council could sign off on it? I don't know if that's something y'all could agree
That
to.
would leave us in a very vague position of not knowing whether we were going to be approved with all the work we've done.
Right, and it's similar to what the 2016
Yeah.
condition was that we come back that we weren't sure about either.
So at this point in time, you don't even have to build the building that you showed us in a picture of.
But we'd have to build a building substantially similar.
Yeah.
That staff would have to sign off based on guidelines that you guys voted on and put in place a couple of years ago.
But it could definitely be a building with different levels of glazing, different levels of brick color, different levels of thing that actually then would certainly throw it out of congruence.
Well,
So
then
there's
it
the
wouldn't be
risk
a-
of the village.
No, if you read through the form-based guidelines, it does say, it does talk about congruity. It does talk about all of the different massing. It defines a lot of those pieces, very similar to what the HPC guidelines do.
Okay.
So, plus, we don't want it to be different than what we're showing.
No, I understand that, but I think we need something in a
Red brick's
condition
fine,
that would
but there's
state that.
500 shades of red brick.
Right.
And I think the specificity we would need is this particular brick, this particular model, and it's,
Don't forget
it's,
the grout.
yeah, it's hard to get locked into that.
I think what's underlining this discussion is that this building is a pioneer in this area, okay? And so that's what makes us chat about this way. It's not, oh, it's like the other 4 buildings down the street, or it's this or that. This is, people are going to look at this, other developers and other builders are going to say, that's what we're going to produce. And I'm hoping, of course, I'm going to say, that's great. And I guess, though, there's some hesitation of how do we
No,
make sure they did that.
I think that
So I'm trying to get to yes here, I just don't have it.
I am persuaded at this point that I don't think we can come up with additional
We've exhausted
conditionality.
it.
I completely agree.
Yeah, we've
I
exhausted
think
the conversation.
And the only thing
They
is,
have as much riding on this as we do.
that's one factor arguing in the right direction. And the second thing is, it is at the end of the day, although I think it could be catalytic, and I'm not proposing, if it went wrong, we'll have options to become more conditional on subsequent things, which I don't think we're going to have to do.
Jeremy?
I think,
You have any thoughts?
I don't think we're going to be able to come to an agreement. I think that we're going to exhaust both arguments, and we're just going to declare that we just can't come to it. I mean, I've heard that we're willing, but then I don't see that we're willing. So I don't think that we've exhausted it, and I don't think that we're going to come to an agreement.
Okay.
One option, of course, is to hold this open and see if both sides can agree on any sort of condition, but, it may be the same discussion we've been having here.
Yeah, sure.
yeah,
I don't see us
we could
coming to it.
defer action in the interest of trying to further negotiate, and I don't think that's probably the right way to go here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do I have a motion?
Yes, I'll be happy to make a motion. I move to approve ordinance 2603, amending the Village of Pinehurst official zoning map for 275 McCaskill Road and find the amendment consistent with guiding principle 2 and implementation strategy 2.8 of the Village of Pinehurst 2019 comprehensive plan in both the Village Place Small Area Plan and Form-Based Guidance Plan. Requested amendment is considered reasonable and in the best interest of the public.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. Motion adopted 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if we're not going to take a recess, I'm going to take a recess, so.
You hungry? It's past dinner. No, okay, why don't we take a 10-minute break? We'll reconvene at 8. Is that okay?
Yep.
So be it. get back on our horses and keep riding. We have on here right now, we went through 11, we're on 12. We have two resolutions. The first one is accepting the high bid. Who rejects a high bid? But accepting the high bid for certain public real property at auction. This was a success, another success in our.
Yeah, I mean, $81,000 is more than I would have paid. I think this is something that we should accept and.
Yeah, is
I
there,
recommend approval.
this has been a small but little success story that actually impresses residents when they hear about it. And I know we'll be looking if there are further properties, but we must have accumulated $200,000+ since we started doing this on 5 properties, I guess.
Yep.
Right, so this is, the biggest one we had was $94,000. I guess this might be runner-up, or?
Close, yeah, I forget exactly.
Because
but yeah.
81, all right, well, if there's a motion, we can get this done with, unless someone wants to reject the high bid.
I move to approve Resolution 2604, accepting the high bid for certain real property at public auction, and authorizing the village manager to execute the necessary documents to transfer title to the high bidder.
Second.
Motion and a second, those in favor?
Aye.
Sold at auction, okay. Now we're going to
Bring something for everyone?
2606, adopting the Cape Fear Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. You need to address this for us. Chief, I see you approaching. I was getting ready to turn to Doug, and then I said, whoops, it's a chief situation. Come forward.
Actually, I stayed just to see y'all tonight, so.
All right.
So be glad to answer any questions that you have. Basically, just give you a summary. So the Cape Fear Hazard Mitigation Plan, this is a federal requirement. This happens once every 5 years. The plan's already in place. It's updated. And so basically what this year was just an update to the plan that was passed in 2021.
What does the plan do?
So the Hazard Mitigation Plan is a federal requirement. It's a federal requirement that came into place in 2000, which is a federal law, the Stafford Disaster Recovery Plan. And so it requires communities to go in and have a mitigation plan, disaster mitigation plan. And basically what it is it identifies the hazards that you have in your community. It brings those out. You work through that process. And then we have to have one on file. And that being on file, if we do, unfortunately, would have a disaster that requires federal assistance, it allows us to tap into the federal assistance, much like what you see the other communities from the storm back over the summer. We have to have that on file to be able to apply for that type of disaster assistance.
What is the plan? If we have a tornado come through here, what kicks in?
So what the plan actually does is there's two different types of plans. That the hazard mitigation plan goes through and details the types of hazards, the different things that we plan for. As part of, we attach to the county as well, the county emergency management and the county plan. And there's 5 counties that are part of this program, the Cape Fear region. There's 5 other counties that are part of that. And what it does is it takes Moore County and then it takes the other municipalities within Moore County, and we plan that together. So basically what it is, it shows us the hazards that we have. It details them, and then we're able to put forth actions working along with our partners at the county, other municipalities, to prepare for them to be able to respond to them and then mitigate them to where you do away with them, hopefully, down the road.
Yeah, so John, to clarify, it's not an emergency response plan.
Right.
It's hazard mitigation. So it looks at, tornado might be a hazard. Hurricane's probably a hazard that is most likely. So it talks about what can we do as a group to mitigate those hazards.
There's nothing we can do to mitigate the hazard of a tornado. It's going to come or it's not.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Forget what we're going to do afterwards. That's the emergency response piece. But
Right. Yeah. So we have an emergency operations plan, which is separate. We've already got that. This is about letting you know the hazards you have so you can try to plan for them, get the resources you need to mitigate them.
So other than hurricane and tornadoes, and what's the other
It's
mitigating ones?
hazardous materials, for example. Well,
Hazardous materials.
okay, hazardous materials. How can you mitigate that, whether it's in transportation, fixed facilities, where it's at in your community? So those areas are identified in our community.
So
And-
those trains that come through Pinehurst?
Yes.
Is that covered
That
by
would be
this?
transportation, yes, sir.
Okay.
If there's hazmat on one of those and the train derails next to the cradle, we've got an emergency response plan for that, but do we do any inspection of the track to try to mitigate?
Knows though that type of thing, we know, for example, that hazardous materials go up and down that line through commodity flow surveys and things that we know those commodities are moving through the area. But in terms of inspections and all that, those are other agencies that have that jurisdiction to do that.
It's a pretty powerful plan that we have.
Okay. Hopefully, it's a plan that we never have to use.
But we have to have one.
Yes, sir, we have to have it.
Like Mike Tyson said, everyone goes into the ring with a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yes, right.
Is that Mike Tyson? Okay. All right, do we have a motion here?
Say, if we have to have one, I move to approve Resolution 26-06, adopting the Cape Fear Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan 2025.
Second.
Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Be safe out there, Chief. Okay.
I will sleep much better tonight knowing that we have this in place.
I want to get nervous if I hear a train whistle. All right. 13A, ordinance 2604, amending section 9216 of the Village Pinehurst Municipal Code, sound levels.
Yeah, so last meeting, we talked about this a little bit, that we've had concerns from residents, and there's a conflict between golf course maintenance early in the morning. Our current ordinance says that anything before 7 a.m. cannot exceed 60 decibels, but there are some golf course maintenance activities that will exceed 60 decibels, but we think it's reasonable, being a resort golf-oriented community, that should be adjusted. So this proposed ordinance gives some leeway, but also I put a little bit of a hard stop at 75 decibels, which I don't think will be a problem, so that they can't go crazy, but we will give them the latitude to do the work that they need to in the mornings.
Scroll back a little, just so I could catch the beginning.
We are adding a subsection to our existing noise ordinance. It does not change that ordinance with respect to residential properties and so forth.
Yeah, so what we're doing is exempting golf course maintenance from the requirement that it can't be above 60 decibels before 7 a.m.
And we're not imposing any other limit. There is effectively they can be as loud as they want.
No, so in the subsection 9 point, all those letters and numbers, the last line is the equipment and operating practices that generally do not exceed 75 decibels of the property line.
Did we have any discussion with, hypothetically, the largest golf resort in the world about whether they think 75 decibels is a reasonable standard?
Yeah, and so I talked to Pinehurst, CCNC, Pine Wild. They said there was no way that they can operate with they have to operate before 7 a.m., obviously.
In the summer.
Yep, and they said, at the source, a leaf blower is about 75 to 80, but if we're talking about property lines, that shouldn't be a problem at all, because it will denigrate before it gets to the property line.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve ordinance 26-04, amending section 92.16 of the Village of Pinehurst Municipal Code to add subsection 9216B1B3 relating to golf course operations.
We have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion adopted. Okay, now we're on to 14, other business. I've got two little items. I just want to, for the record, we all received from Mary Stewart Regensburg, a Pinehurst resident on 3 Innsbrook Place, a news clip that it talks about affordable housing, and she just wanted to share it with all of us, and thought it would be helpful for us as we take up this issue in the future, if and when we do. So that's for the record. Two other businesses. In the land use plan that the county took up, I noticed in a news clip that within it are recommendations to create other plans with more specific designs and outcomes. One of those is a master utilities plan described to create guidelines and recommendations for all water and sewer customers. My general question is this something we need to check on? And if so, is this something we need to speak out about, be involved with? I'll ask Jeremy and the village manager, because I think you two are the closest to this topic.
All right, well, I think in our work session, we're offering to do things just like that, to be a part of any, future plans. I do think it's appropriate to reach out to the county and say, hey, we want to be involved in this process. It will affect our taxpayers because they're ratepayers, and we just want to be involved.
Okay.
I think through the process of the planning, or the Moore County Land Use Plan, at least through the committee process, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of willingness on the county side as well as the suggestion of the committee side that we have a lot more interaction with municipalities. And because we understand that if the population continues to grow, then we're going to need a lot of that collaboration too, whether it's pricing of housing, where, and we just need a lot of input. So I think this letter is very direct that we're willing and shows our willingness and to help on whatever topic they wish to have or whatever committee they form.
So if they're going to set up this separate one, we too want to be engaged in it.
And we're totally willing to help.
Okay.
This is specific to utilities.
Yeah, this was specific. The other one is more generic, but sure. that our letter's discussing. Okay. Doug, anything else you want to add to this? No? Okay. I guess I'll just ask Dan. When municipalities are working with counties on things like land use plans and these offshoots, is there anything we should look for or pay attention to, or is it?
Not in particular. I mean, you just have to know what you want to have in place and make sure we advocate for our
village. Okay. Well, we'll just have to stay alert to this because we're a big customer. I think we're the biggest customer of the utility. So, okay. The other thing I got from a resident, where is it? Oh yeah. I had a request, so I guess we can just pass this on to the chief of police. One of our speed flashing signs, Sugar Pine Road. They'd love to have one of those. So
I will make a note.
Whenever it's appropriate. I'm sure they'll be very happy.
I'd be happy to move it off of the road that I drive on and move it onto Sugar Pine.
There you go. We sell two birds with one stone. Okay.
Actually, as a follow-up to that, because last year I actually had one in my front yard. Almost.
Yes, you did.
It is my understanding that they actually capture non-specific data. In other words, it's not the license plate, it's not the owner, but they get a traffic count and they get a high speed and a low speed and I would love to see whatever data we have accumulated over the last year, what have you, on various roads. I think that speeding is a not infrequently mentioned issue.
One of our colleagues is very familiar with this speeding signs. Kevin, what can you tell us that you guys collected in number 6?
Oh, we have reams of data on this.
I want to know what we have elsewhere, not to the exclusion of that, because it's equally valid. The fact that you did it is great. The police department's been doing it elsewhere in Pinehurst, and I've never seen the numbers.
I don't know that they analyze the data afterwards. I think that's the issue.
I actually had a very nice discussion with the officer who was moving ours, and said, first thing I have to do is download that data. So it is there somewhere.
Okay.
And I would just request that we, not tomorrow morning, but at some point.
Okay.
Yep, we can provide that, and I talked to the chief about it, and generally, the average is about 5 miles per hour more than what the posted speed limit is, and then you have some crazy ones, which sometimes they're so crazy, like there's no way that's an accurate reading, but
Okay.
But yeah, we can
Okay.
find some data and get it to you.
Maybe we can put it in a weekly report or
You
something.
did a great thing, because you took control of the process, so you have the data.
They bought the sign. They bought the sign. They've got their,
And we move the data in response to we move the signs in response to the data we're seeing, to move them to hotspots, and then we contact the chief about targeted enforcement.
okay. All right. Other business, anyone else has something they want to bring up?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Primarily Dana last year brought forth a number of policies, writing down our debt policy and our asset management policy, so forth, which I thought was terrific. And they were, doing that stuff is not fun because it's ridiculously detailed, but you have to do it. Do we have a policy on how we conduct due diligence when we hire contractors? And if we don't, ought we have one other than we're going to let Oakley Collier do it on, I'm using that as an example, not a specific.
There's not a written policy. Do we follow best practices? Yes. Would that be put into a policy? It could.
I ask it in light of our favorite repaving process, and whether, as part of what we learned out of that, there is an improvement that can be made. Whether that requires a formal policy or not, I will defer.
Yeah.
Or
Dan?
certain- Where we reach certain monetary thresholds, there are statutes that come into play with respect to bidding. Then the procedure is a little more formally set out by statute. So certainly for bigger projects, that's going to apply, and we follow general statutes.
Okay, that makes sense. It's probably what, $1 million threshold or something that you get kicked in? Oh, it is lower than that, okay.
300, right? Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. State's picky. All right. Any other business? Okay. We are through with the regular council meeting, and if someone wants to officially end it.
Move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, let us go to, what?